The story begins with a suspicious man in a suit traveling on a train and holding a notebook. In it, he had a picture of a woman, after which he chuckled and shut it down. At this time, a girl in the village of Sorrento wanted to fry an egg, but suddenly she saw that someone began to climb out of it. She didn't realize what it was. An incomprehensible black creature that only made noises came out of there. And then it came out, and it was a dragon, a very small dragon. The girl looked at him and didn't realize who he was or where he had come from in her dinner. Creatures from legends that populated this universe in the distant past, and now they're gracing the back pages of the encyclopedia. But who would have thought that the egg the girl wanted to eat would hatch a dragon? All her life, the girl has been obsessed with notorious novels that have a good beginning but a bad ending. And she couldn't have said she was happy about it. She ended up dying of overwork. And then, when she opened her eyes, she took the form of a soul traveling the vastness of the universe. But as soon as she saw the still-cold corpse, she immediately took a seat in it. The soul didn't understand why the girl had died without a scratch on her body. She looked more like a doll than a corpse. The body she had taken possession of was Eleanor Azels. This was a strong-willed individual with a dark past. She was as powerful as even the strongest people in the novel's universe. But nobody knew that she had taken possession of Eleanor's body, and also in a few years she was to be killed. The girl was very frightened by this, so she decided to run away to the village. The most important thing was not to die a miserable death due to overwork, and so the girl decides to live quietly and just rest in this godforsaken village called Sorrento. But no such luck, she has another adventure she never expected. And out of nowhere, this dragon appeared. This dragon is the pet of the novel's protagonist who has to make a barbecue out of her at the end of the story. But in the original, it is not she who has to find the egg, but Lenia who then joins the dragon. She didn't understand how the dragon could have got the wrong address, and the girl decides that the dragon must be sent to its rightful owner, so she closed it in a box and gave it to the postman, and told him to deliver the chest to the solitaire. The girl thought that she had just encountered a mistake, and was already happy to continue her carefree life again. But not so the next day. The girl was shocked, but she had this dragon in her house again. The dragon was trying to tell her something, but the girl was just angry that she wouldn't be able to go on living a quiet life. She wanted to just leave him and go at least get some more sleep. But the dragon wouldn't let her go. He grabbed the girl by her pajamas and pulled her towards him, not letting her get away. Eleanor didn't know what to do in such a situation, and she was already starting to scream. She shouted to the dragon for them to make a preemie. And then suddenly the girl decides to use her magic. He lifted a towel into the air and wrapped it around the dragon and pushed it away from him. Turns out the notes on magic in Eleanor's diary might even be useful. But the dragon didn't fight back. He just sadly fell to the floor and started crying. The girl couldn't leave so easily and decided to see if he was okay. Eleanor decided to feel sorry for the dragon, and took him in her arms to stop him crying and asked him what he wanted to do. The dragon began to smile, and the girl didn't understand how he was here if just yesterday she had sent him a parcel. The girl received a notice that the parcel had been successfully delivered, and the chest was padlocked. But somehow, magically, she had the dragon again. Eleanor stroked the dragon and told him not to worry anymore as she would bring him back to his mum. So the next day the girl decides to put the dragon in a chest and put some toys near it. Whereupon the girl closes it and runs quickly to the door. She decided to try to send the dragon again, so she ordered an expensive premium delivery and added to make sure it was delivered safely and without error. The next day when Eleanor woke up, she saw the dragon in her house again. She was in complete shock and couldn't imagine how he could be here at all. As the dragon moves into the hatching stage, it begins to look out for the people around it. Then he chooses his favorite and creates a special magical bond with him. It is necessary for the dragon, being a creature from another world, to be able to stay in this universe. If the dragon found such a man, he too could take on human form. It was written in an ancient story Eleanor had read. Suddenly, after she thought about it, she saw the little dragon turn into a little boy. She was in shock at what was happening, and she still couldn't believe that it was possible that all of this was true. The boy immediately ran to the girl for a hug. Eleanor could not understand how she could have got such an egg if she had bought it at the market. Maybe someone had lost it. Although it was unlikely that the royal court could lose a dragon egg that was being closely guarded, Eleanor began to think that perhaps someone had planted it on her. Even though no one here knew the girl, Eleanor knew a lot of people here. She decided to ask the boy if he remembered who had dropped him off in the village of Sorrento. The boy vaguely said he was in an egg. Eleanor realized that, but he was a dragon, and didn't he hear strange conversations or voices outside? But the boy only looked at Eleanor and smiled at her. In the original story, the protagonist Lenia broke an egg while visiting an abandoned fortress, after which a dragon formed a bond with her. Then Lenia and began to hunt the villainous Eleanor, that with all her might tried to seize the power of the dragon. In the course of the story, she also met the protagonist with whom she had formed an alliance. The girl had no desire to repeat it. Eleanor thought that the royal palace was in chaos because of the missing egg, and she wanted to return it to its mistress as soon as possible. Supposedly it was that if the girl didn't give the dragon the Imya, then the bond with her would be incomplete and she wouldn't tame it. Eleanor was telling the dragon that she wasn't abandoning him, just returning him to his real mother. The boy just looked at the girl with his eyes and fell asleep like an angel. The girl with him in her arms decided to go to the city. She wanted the dragon to be happier with the protagonist. At this time in the Sorrento Community Policing Organization, there sat a man who was already asleep out of boredom, but suddenly a stranger comes to him. He starts to say that he is an investigator from Taziva. In response, they start asking him who he is and from which department. The guy introduced himself and said he was from Izeth, head of Bureau of Security and Investigations. The guy asked if he knew he was here on business. The man immediately started looking at him. He recognized his violet eyes, his gold brooch, and a revolver. The boy asked the guard if there had been any incidents. He wanted to familiarize himself with all the incidents connected with Baroness Eleanor. The guard told him that there had been no incident involving the Baroness. He said she doesn't even go out much. It's always quiet in the Sorrento. The warden understood and decided to walk away from them. At the last one, he told the guard to tidy up his place and stay awake during working hours. The guard promised not to do it again. The guy went to the market and decided he'd find her himself. But suddenly he saw Eleanor holding someone in her arms. The guy couldn't understand what this girl had a baby doing in her arms, and he was interested in what they were talking about. The girl was telling him that he would go with the uncle to the capital and they would meet him there. And then all of a sudden the girl starts giving the baby to some guy. The guy was utterly bewildered. And so the dragon was sitting again and he was very sad because he had been abandoned again. The kid looked at the man and saw how angry he looked at him. He was scared and didn't know what to do. The boy decides that he needs to run. He slips out of the man's arms and starts to run away with all his might. The dragon sat sadly near the tree. He thought that probably the girl didn't like him and he wasn't handsome, because she had already left him for the 5th time. He was saying that he didn't love Eleanor anymore and crying, but suddenly someone asked him if he was lost. It turned out to be the same man who was looking for Eleanor. Suddenly, the next day, the girl woke up to the banging of the door. She went to the door to check who might be there, and when she opened the door, she saw that the dragon had come back to her again. She was really angry about it. The dragon cried and was upset that no one loved him. Also, Eleanor couldn't understand who the man who brought this dragon was. The man asked the girl why she abandoned this child and started to hand it to the girl. Eleanor looked at the man, his violet eyes, black hair, and brooch. She recognized the guy immediately. The man was telling her that he was honored that she still remembered him, but now he wanted to hear her answer the question. Eleanor was in complete shock that this man could bring her this dragon. She didn't realize what a coincidence this was. This man is Kyle Renaud. He's the main character in this story. The girl remembered that he was the second son of Duke Renaud. He was a high-ranking official in the security department in Varan, as well as the head of the capital's branch in Tezev, and the former general manager of the Loran district. He is the youngest supervisor and is simply a brilliant investigator. His obedience is extremely impressive, but he is best at handling weapons. Anyone who tried to get away from him could almost never survive. He was a very good shot. Since the witch Eleanor was closely linked to Laurent's underworld, the relationship between them became very tense. Part of the reason the girl came to this village was to never cross paths with him again in her life. But right now, he's the one standing in front of her. Eleanor began to tell the boy that she had not abandoned him, but simply wanted to return him to his legal guardian. The man was surprised, as the child had not told him this. The boy begged the girl not to leave him. He begged her very much for him to stay and cried. He said that he would no longer ask her for milk or annoy her. The girl was surprised that the boy could talk now, although yesterday he could not even say a word. Kyle asked the girl who his guardian really was, and who the girl was to him. The girl in a loud tone answered him that she was no one to her. The boy at this time was crying very hard and was sad. He called the girl his mistress. Eleanor didn't understand why he called her mistress. She claimed to the investigator that he wasn't her child, and she'd only recently met him herself. She claimed she was just trying to return it to its owner, but he wouldn't leave. The guy immediately started writing down that the girl had abandoned her child. But the girl immediately started to justify herself and said that the guy had misunderstood him. But the investigator added that he also suspected the girl of child abuse. Not only had she dumped him, but she'd made him call her mistress, and it was very suspicious. Eleanor argued that she hadn't forced anyone to call her that, and the man from the butcher's shop could be trusted. The man no longer believed her. He asked Eleanor where that butcher was going to go, and to whom he was to give the child. The girl answered him that his guardian lived in the capital, and the child was to be handed over to him. But the investigator didn't believe her and wanted her to prove it. He offered the girl to write a letter of explanation, but the girl had nothing to say. The man also added that the girl was under suspicion in the case, and the missing egg in Laurent. And since the girl already has a criminal record, he got a warrant for her arrest with permission from His Majesty Laurent. Eleanor shouted to the man that this could not be, as she was not stealing anything, and on the contrary was trying to solve everything. She grabbed the man. Then she started asking him to just come in and talk to her. But Kyle told the girl that if she continued to hold him by force, he would be forced to use force. The girl didn't know what to do, but she saw the rope dangling and decided to use her magic to wrap it around the man so he couldn't escape. But since she wasn't very good at magic, she bound herself too, but managed to untie herself quickly, leaving only Kyle tied up. The man started telling Eleanor to get off him. The girl immediately started apologizing to him and stood up. But all of a sudden the girl got really bad. She no longer had the energy she used to have to fight. The girl started saying what she really wanted to do was just sleep. This caused the man to look away, and the girl slapped the man on the back again with her magic. The man fell. The girl didn't want anyone with a gun, because she saw that the man had a gun. So the girl tied him up again and took him to the other room. Eleanor had hoped that he wasn't dead, as she hadn't planned to kill him, she just wanted to resolve things peacefully. But there was a small mistake. The boy asked the landlady if she was all right, and the girl answered the little boy not to take his real form in front of this uncle. The boy agreed. The girl also added that the boy should no longer call her mistress. He was at a loss as to how she was his mistress. The girl had no way of raising a child. She doesn't know anything about raising children. Besides, she has no desire to get involved with the original story. Right now, the girl just wanted to rest alone. The boy didn't know what to say to her and asked if he could stay with her. He suggested to the girl that he would protect her. If the girl doesn't believe him, he can prove it. He wanted to massacre the man right now, but the girl talked him out of it. The girl didn't know what to do with him, since he was the dragon that had turned Eleanor into coals. If he was thrown out into the street, he might even kill someone. And maybe the girl would have to take care of his upbringing after all. So the girl told the dragon that she wouldn't leave him, and also to remember that taking someone's life is wrong. The boy began to repeat after the girl that it is impossible to kill living beings without reason, and it is impossible to hurt other people without reason, and to lie and steal. Even if he wants it badly, he'll tolerate it. And before doing anything, he'd ask the girl. Eleanor told the baby that if he didn't tell his uncle he was a dragon, she'd keep him. The boy questioned the girl on what he should do. Then he said what he agreed and went to hug the girl. The girl also added that her name is Noah, and he shouldn't call her mistress. Even considering she told him her name, he shouldn't think of messing with her. And the girl was suggesting the dragon just live together. And then it's up to the dragon to decide if it needs a mistress. The baby wanted to add something, but the girl took him in her arms and said that no refusal was accepted, and since it was already late, she decided to take him to bed. Besides, the girl was very tired herself, but for some reason the dragon didn't want to sleep. In that case, the girl offered him to follow his uncle. At this time, the man was already trying to untie himself as he found a knife in his possession, and he successfully did so, after which he decided to find his stuff. The man noticed that the girl had a very small house, and it was obvious that she was not a good hostess, as her house was not clean. It was nothing like that mansion in the capital. The man didn't understand how Eleanor had decided to live a modest life in the countryside. He decided to check on the girl since it looked like she was sick. He saw the way she slept and thought she was very beautiful, but he would also like her to be not only beautiful but also good and not conniving. Suddenly, the man heard a voice telling him to stop. The man saw that it was the same boy, but he didn't understand why he had already grown so much. The boy told him that if he did any harm to Noah, he wouldn't stay away. Kyle asked the baby what his name was, but he replied that he didn't have a name because Noah hadn't thought of one yet. Kyle was already starting to suspect something, as this boy isn't naturally growing up fast, calling this girl mistress, and besides, he hasn't even got a name yet. The man asked the kid who he was, but he told him that he wouldn't tell him who he was, so this girl must like him. The boy really liked this girl. Since all the days he was here, she was looking after him, trying to feed him, don't even know anything about it, always trying to take care of him and keep him warm and not get sick. The kid couldn't tell him who he was, but he seemed to have figured it out. Just kill him to keep him out of the way. He began to remember Eleanor's words about not hurting others, so he approached Kyle and decided to make a deal with him. He offered to make it so that this girl wouldn't leave him, and then he wouldn't kill him or interfere with him in any way. The man realized that he could not allow them to form a bond, but in order to prevent this and to uncover all the facts of the case, the boy would have to be watched, so he agreed. And so the girl was already awake. She had slept all day already. For some reason lately, she's been feeling nauseous and always has a headache. She also saw that the dragonkin was still sleeping, so she decided to cuddle him and sleep some more. But suddenly she jumped out of bed and remembered that she had tied up the main character, and something might happen to him. But when she came running into the room, he was already sitting there in his uniform, wishing her good morning. He said she needed to sit down and they needed to talk. Started telling the girl that she could use to clean her house, to which the girl replied that she would do it sometime. Then the man began to tell Eleanor that she had to write an explanatory letter, one about why she had abandoned the child and one about the missing egg. The girl claimed to the man that she had nothing to do with the missing egg, but he no longer believed her, and he realized that she would not cooperate with him amicably. And he told the girl that for that matter he was introduced to follow the girl. He came here on His Majesty's orders to find Eleanor, or rather the prime suspect, and he has a license to do so and an order. He hoped that the girl remembered the note she had written to him 2 years ago, where she had repented. It said that if she refused to assist the investigation, she would turn over all her assets to the community and do community service for life. After all, she's Eleanor, who's committed 15 felonies. Kyle offered to clean up first. He immediately noticed that the girl here had an illegal magical artifact that he wanted to confiscate. He also saw some other prohibited items that had been there for a long time, which he wanted to throw away, and confiscate everything. He started his cleaning and quickly got down to business. The girl also tried to pretend that she was cleaning, but in fact she was only in the way. This made him angry, and he told the girl to wait for him outside, pushing her out with his foot. And so when the girl had already returned, she saw in the house an incredible beauty. She thanked Kyle for the work he'd done, but that was only part of the investigation. The little boy also said that he helped his uncle, for which he was praised. Kyle told the girl not to make such a mess anymore, but suddenly the girl felt dizzy. She didn't know what was wrong with her. Suddenly the girl starts to have memories of her past life. She was told that in the modern world you can't follow orders without free will. Stop being robots and go towards progress. Create something new. Be more diligent, and then you will definitely be noticed. The main thing is to try and put as much effort into your work as possible. That's what the girl was always told, and she tried with all her might to finish her project as successfully as possible, and then she would definitely be recognized as the best. The girl has spent her whole life trying to work harder and harder to at least be recognized by someone, but she was never recognized. The girl opened her eyes and didn't understand what had happened to her. She felt very weak, but she couldn't faint. It all reminded her of the days when she worked in an office. As soon as the baby saw the way Noah woke up, he immediately jumped up to hug her. But the man grabbed him and prevented him from hugging her. Since it is better not to go near a sick person, the girl could have infected him. Kyle put the baby in a chair and started asking the girl what was wrong with her. The girl didn't understand why no one should be allowed near her. She wasn't contagious. But the man said that he was still very young and could not take any risks. The man also suggested to the girl that she should sit closer to him. The girl was against it, but he said he just wanted to take her temperature. If he wanted to hurt her, he would have done it long ago. Kyle immediately noticed that the girl had a slight fever, but he didn't understand what was wrong with the girl because you don't faint at this temperature. Kyle looked at the girl's arm and asked her why it was so thin. Eleanor had always been very strong and healthy in body. The man assumed that the girl had been abusing magic lately, but she claimed it never happened, and she doesn't even know how to use it. The man looked at the girl, and it was all very strange to him. He told the girl that she should give up sleeping with the baby for now. Noah didn't understand what was wrong. Kyle told her that as he had said earlier, he could get infected, and it wasn't worth endangering the baby. The baby was very upset that he would no longer be able to sleep with his mistress together. He again wanted to jump to her to hug her, but his attempt was again unsuccessful. Kyle told the girl to get some more sleep and he would wake her up before he left. And so the next morning, the girl was already looking much more awake. The girl claimed to the man that it was just simple hypotension. The man responded by telling her that her main problem was carrying the baby in her arms. He then took the baby from her and started to carry it away. Noah told Kyle that he looked very lonely, and she only wanted to cheer him up. Eleanor also asked the gentleman if he was being too arbitrary by entering her house without permission. He replied that the girl had agreed to help in the investigation. The girl also added that if he was so serious at such a young age, he would die of overwork. He hoped she hadn't cursed him now, but she was rather sympathetic. Here some woman knocked on their door. The investigator said that he had called a doctor to help the girl. After the doctor took the girl's tests, he found out that she had a nutritional deficiency and asked what the girl's diet consisted of. The girl said that she usually eats buns, biscuits, and sometimes eggs. The doctor was surprised that the girl does not eat fish, meat, or vegetables at all. Noah has started to say that sometimes they bring her meat, but she hardly eats fish and vegetables because they spoil very quickly. It takes a lot of energy to cook and clean. The doctor found out that the main cause of all her symptoms is laziness. Besides, the magic in the body was rather unstable. Although the era of pure magic is already a thing of the past, but there are still people born who possess it, just like the girl. In most cases, a very small amount of magic circulates in the blood, which, despite the above, cannot be ignored. Since this mysterious power was given out by nature itself, and even the slightest disturbance is reflected in the well-being of a person. The girl's magic should be circulating freely in her body, but instead it's leaking out, and her bad lifestyle is only exacerbating the effect. So she told the man that he should take care of his wife's diet. If he got her health in order, the magic leakage would probably stop. But still, the underlying cause was unknown. The doctor decided to prescribe medication for the girl. She also saw a very small baby. She said that the baby was stretched out because of her mom's magic power. She said that the baby's magic and the girl's magic were very similar. This baby must have been endowed with an extraordinary ability. Sometimes children who possess magic absorb the mother's magical power. And then it was clear how he had grown so fast, the little rascal. The boy didn't realize what he had done wrong. That was the end of it. The doctor said goodbye and said that if there were any problems, they could contact me. The girl took the dragon in her arms, and hoping they hadn't guessed that he was actually a dragon, decided to walk away from the man. But the man stopped the girl and invited her to have a word with him. He asked about the girl what she usually eats for breakfast, to which the girl replied that she doesn't usually eat breakfast. The man realized that the girl's problem with magic would be solved as soon as she bonded with the dragon. Once the standard bond is created, the dragon's magic will start flowing into her body. He can't let that happen. Not only does she have a bad temper and is conniving, but she doesn't care about any moral principles at all. He didn't know what would happen if the dragon's power was taken over by such a person. The man tells Eleanor that she should give up magic for a while. He realizes that, like many other magicians, she uses the forces of nature. But right now she should refrain from doing that. He hoped that she would not ignore him and accept his words, to which the girl agreed. But there was one last problem about what kind of child it was. He started asking about where he came from, and wanted the girl herself to tell him everything about him. She knew he'd ask. The girl answered that it was a 3-year-old child who had fallen on her head straight from heaven. The man was at a loss as to how the child had fallen from heaven. The kid started telling the girl that he didn't mean to hurt the girl, and the girl understood that. She suggested going to the capital and meeting with Lenya. She wanted to try and get the dragon to recognize her as mistress, then the problem would be solved. She didn't want the dragon to mess with her anyway, and so she told the man that they had to go to the capital and there was no choice. But the man shouted at her not to do it. Whatever she's thinking about right now, she shouldn't do it. There's only one thing they can do in this situation, and that's to increase a girl's stamina. The man suggested that the girl make it so that she wouldn't be affected by the magic leak and stop making up nonsense. He argued that it was part of the investigation. Though the girl didn't want to, she had to agree with the man. A little later, the girl went to rest a little, but when she came back, she saw what Kyle had prepared, a very tasty dish. The girl was shocked at how beautiful it was and went straight to eat. The next day, while Noah was sleeping, the boy came to Kyle and started asking him why he wasn't honoring the terms of the contract. He was unhappy that the man was advising Nov to leave him, although he promised he'd help them create a bond. The man had nothing to say. He realized that the boy had already grown attached to Eleanor, and now he looked like a normal child. He couldn't understand how he could get so close to the Baroness. Kyle gave him some tea, and told him that if the boy continued to spend time with Noah, he would eventually absorb her magic, which could put her on death's doorstep. The boy didn't know what to say. He thought that if they made the bond, she would feel better. But Kyle told him that she wasn't planning to do that. But the boy begged Kyle to make the connection. But the man didn't want him as his help has limits, which caused the boy to get very upset and start walking away. But Kyle stopped him and asked him why he was so attached to her. The baby replied that she helped him hatch. The man immediately realized that she had stolen the egg after all. But according to his investigation, for 2 years she never left the Sorrento. It was unclear how she had managed to sneak into a castle where everyone knew her. Even though she was a mage, it was hardly possible to steal an egg and disappear without a trace. Or there's also the possibility that she had an accomplice. Kyle asked if the baby had heard something when he was in the egg. He did hear something, he said, but he didn't know who it was because half the time he was asleep. Kyle was sure that she had an accomplice who had his own reasons for cooperating with her and who was able to bypass the defense system. Maybe it was him, the guy who was in a relationship with the Baroness. So the next morning, the man woke the girl up. Then he told her to head for the shower. Noah didn't mind him. Afterwards, she dressed up, and again when she came in, there were some very tasty and healthy meals on the table. Noah and her baby were very happy to eat such food. Meanwhile, Kyle continued to clean the house. He was saying that cleanliness is an essential part of life. He was afraid to imagine the mess the girl was making on the first floor. The baby at this time was obediently eating with his head down, but suddenly the girl noticed that it was obvious from his eyes that he was crying. She immediately started asking him about why his eyes were so red, but the baby didn't want to tell her that he was crying. The girl also noticed that the boy would not melt anymore. Perhaps he lacked magic. But the boy replied that he was fine. The girl took the baby in her arms and wanted to hold him for a few minutes, but Kyle forbade her to do so. He took the baby away from Noah and told her she couldn't hold him because she had recently been sick. He said he was trying to bring the girl to her senses and she was cuddling with the man responsible for her illness. The girl didn't like the fact that he was taking her baby away from her, so she decided to leave quietly. The man noticed that the girl didn't finish anything, which is why she lost at least 15 pounds. Lavushka wondered how he knew her weight, to which Kyle replied that he knew everything: age, date of birth, height, weight, fingerprints, and even stride length. The girl was shocked by his words and it gave her goosebumps. Kyle found it strange that they had spent so much time together, and he could easily have known about such small things. They also wanted to go for a walk with the baby, but he refused, saying he would stay home. A girl at night decided to go to the baby and saw that he was wrapped up and said that he could sleep without her. He said he wasn't a baby anymore and could sleep alone. The girl didn't know what to do, so she decided to go to bed alone. But suddenly at night she was uneasy about she couldn't sleep. So I went to the baby again and lifting the blanket decided to take him with me. Even though he claimed he could sleep alone, she still couldn't do it without him. So she spent that night with the baby. But the next morning when she woke up, she didn't see the boy. She was scared. But when she checked the other room, she found him. The girl decided to take him in her arms for a hug. But suddenly, the boy enlarged, due to which the girl fell down. But the boy didn't realize what had happened. The girl didn't understand what had happened to the baby. He was acting strange, shunning the girl and not telling the reason. Perhaps he felt guilty for pulling magic out of her. But if that's true, why did he only start doing that yesterday? Maybe it's because of the bond with the dragon. The girl didn't want to form a bond with him just because he already had a mistress. A bond with a dragon is for life. Even though the dragon chooses who it wants to bond with, the royal palace keeps an eye on the egg. And the person chosen by the dragon must take part in important events related to the life of the state. She didn't know if she could handle it. Besides, the boy had stopped growing for some reason in the last few days. Suddenly, Noah's thoughts were interrupted by the investigator. He asks if they've seen Adrian Rosenau lately, but the girl didn't even know who she was talking about. Judging by the fact that she doesn't know him, they haven't even met. Today at the interview, the girl was very distracted, and so they decided to continue later. Kyle had some business at the Sorrento branch, so he'd have to leave early. He left a list for the girl to go to the bazaar and buy everything on it. The girl looked at the baby and wanted to go with him, but Kyle said she couldn't be trusted, so he's going with her. And when the girl came with the groceries, she noticed that there was no one in the house. She checked all the rooms and realized that the baby was missing. She immediately went to the yard to look for him, but couldn't find him there either. On the way, she met a woman who told her that a boy with black hair was missing. But when she was asked his name, she was stunned as she realized that the boy didn't even have a name. The girl went home sad and thought that he had left to find another mistress because she didn't want to give him a name. She was very sad and wanted to say goodbye to him, at least for the last time, because she liked living with him too. But she hoped he was just lost after all. And she oregano to the community policing organization, but suddenly she heard a knock. Kyle was at his work at the time. No one understood what he was doing there at that time, but he only said he didn't want to be disturbed. He called his superiors and asked them to send him all the documents about Baroness Eleanor. There can be no mistake in the information he knows, and the fingerprints he had on him are definitely hers. But she always answers like it's not about her at all. And the fact that she didn't know about Andrian, the Minister of Magic, whom she'd been dating for 4 years, is very strange. And there's no point in lying to her either. The guy was puzzled and couldn't figure out who she really was. He didn't understand why she used to be so mean and conniving. Now she's sweet and kind and trying to help. She used to treat everyone with no respect and did a lot of crime. And now cuddles the baby and really loves him. He'd been on her case for 5 years now. Perhaps because she'd been fairly quiet the last 2 years, his guard was down. At this time, the girl went to see what it was in the hope that it was a baby. And it really was him. The girl immediately started hugging him and apologizing, saying it was all her fault. But the dragon pulled out of her embrace and told her not to hug him. The girl didn't understand why he was silent and she wanted to cry. To which the dragon began to reply that they just didn't like him at all. The girl was constantly very kind to him, and so he became attached to her and wanted to spend time together. And then the girl got sick and always refused to make contact with him. He thought he was just starting to annoy them and was afraid that they wouldn't love him anymore and would hate him. Noah retorted that it wasn't really like that. She really didn't want to create a bond with him because she was tired of trying and putting in effort all the time. So she tried to return it to its rightful place. But then she had fun with him, plus the boy is really cute. So she started delaying the decision and she's sorry about that. Noah starts saying something that she is actually very pathetic and decides to ask the baby for them to live together. Noah was afraid to take responsibility for her choices, so she kept postponing her decision. Noah is also unwilling to let go of the dragon and wants to be close to him. The girl was still afraid of what awaited her, but she wasn't going to blame anyone because it was her choice. The boy began to return to his true form and after a few seconds, flew over to the girl to give her a hug. And so the baby and Noah sat on the bed, the girl choosing what name to give him. In the original story, he was called by an ancient name, the Darkest Night. Probably because he had black hair. The girl didn't want to give him a terrible name. She didn't want to give him a horrible name. And then the name Mu came to her mind. Muyel. From the ancient language, it means clear waters. The baby really liked the name. And suddenly after the girl gave him a name, the bond began to work. The baby and Noah began to glow. After that, the girl began to feel a strong burst of energy, and now Noah is the real mistress of this baby. The baby was very happy, and suddenly they heard a knock at the door. Perhaps it was Mr. Renaud, but there was a lot of glow left around the girl, and she decided to confess to him since it was not her fault anyway. But when the girl went to the door the girl could not have expected such a thing. In front of her, she saw Kyle pointing a gun at her and started asking her who this girl really was. All the time he's been here, he's confiscated all the magical artifacts and knows every corner of her house. The girl assumed that he was not asking Eleanor but Noah. The girl gave her real name, said she was 26 years old by local time. Her place of birth is not known because she is outside the realm of reality. The girl told that she worked as an ordinary office employee in a logistics company, and when she appeared here, Eleonora's soul had already left her. Who killed her was unknown to her. The girl's real body had already died of overwork, and her soul ended up being absorbed into this girl. Kyle began to believe her as he remembered her conversations before, and realized that it was all true. The girl added that she didn't even know how to use magic, only magic artifacts. The baby was worried about Noah and approached her, but Noah told him to stay out of it as it was a critical situation. The girl also told the man that she was very lazy, so she would cooperate with him. He did not know if he could believe her because there was no proof, but he decided to lower his weapon, for in his heart he believed this girl. Kyle started to ask her if she had lied about stealing the egg, to which she replied that she really hadn't stolen anything. But suddenly the girl felt very sick. The energy she felt from the dragon seemed to radiate from inside her. The girl collapsed. It had been a few minutes since the girl had fainted. The man wanted to carry her to rest, but the girl was afraid of his gun, so she told him to undress. Afterwards, he carried her to her room. The girl had a high fever. He put her to bed as she needs to rest and will wake her up later himself. There was no proof of what she said, but somehow he believed her anyway. The next morning, the man woke Noah up to question her. Kyle asked the girl again who stole the egg, but the girl once again said she didn't steal it. She said that it was just lying around in some corner of the market, so she thought it was an ostrich egg that she wanted to make scrambled eggs out of. But then the baby appeared. Then they gradually began to get closer, but in fact they only hurt each other, as she did not want to make a connection. The girl will bear a huge responsibility if she makes a connection with the dragon. And the girl knew it, even considering she wasn't from this universe. Even though she had already told him the whole truth, telling him that they were having an affair would not be a good idea, the girl thought. Noah didn't even know who he was marrying, so she decides to say that she has been here for 2 years and found the information in the newspapers. She also asks Kyle how he knew the boy was a dragon from the beginning, to which the boy began to say that his uncle had told him that if he didn't give him any trouble, he would help create a bond. The man didn't know what to do next. To begin with, he decided to choose a future course of action, and he wanted to check something out. He walked over to the girl, took her hand, and he understood. Perhaps the reason for the fainting was this connection, and the girl's seal was very red. The girl was in pain from being touched. Kyle looked at the baby and realized it was about him. The man told Noah to try to control the dragon's magic as it overwhelmed her home and body completely. He suggested she attack him and he didn't care how. She wanted to slap him, but he said it had to be with magic. But the girl told him she didn't know how to use it. The man said there was a problem with the connection. If it had been successful, the dragon's magic would have been synthesized immediately. But the flow of dragon magic is constantly breaking off in her body, and since it's very unstable, it's all affecting her body. If everything was successful, the girl would be able to use dragon magic by now. Maybe it's because she's not in her body. Kyle had heard that dragons begin to form a bond during the incubation period. They resonate with those they come into contact with. And once they hatch, they cut off contact with all but one person. So before she found the egg, he couldn't completely cut off contact with other people. They started asking the boy whose voice he heard and who it belonged to. The boy replied that the voice he heard was similar to Noah's. In the original story, the first person to touch the dragon was Lenya. It seems she found the egg but lost it in an accident. It wasn't clear if she was the first. Dragon said that he had definitely created a bond with Noah. Everything went smoothly and only needed to cut the connection with the person with whom it remained. The kid was sad as he only hurt the girl one way, and deserves to be hated by the girl. But the girl reminded him of what she had told him before. She wasn't going to blame anyone for her choices. Noah told the baby that they were going to have a long and good life together, and they'd cut ties when they found the right person. Kyle said the next day that he was going back to the capital, as she was no longer a suspect, and eventually when he found the culprit, he would notify her. He told the girl to just stay in this body. If Eleanor hadn't killed herself, then someone had killed her and he needed to investigate. Also advised the girl not to use the dragon power all this time. But when he was about to leave, the girl suggested he take a walk afterwards. Kyle, of course, agreed, and they went for a walk. At the market, the guy approached the seller who sells eggs. He asked him if he had big eggs, but he told him that he does not sell such eggs. Kyle also started asking him if he'd had any visitors from Sorrento, to which he replied that of course they had. One day, a girl who had a baby came in and they were with her grandmother. She was wearing a hood, so the seller didn't get a good look at her. As soon as the vendor started selling, this girl came up to him and started asking him about the train timetable for Tazeva. She had a metropolitan accent, which is why he recognized her. He can't remember the exact date, but when he told her the next train would leave in an hour, she ran away. The train runs every 4 days, so he must have seen her about a week ago. The girl came back to the investigator. She said she'd asked the innkeeper, the cook, and the owner of the coffee shop. And all three said they'd seen the hooded girl a few days earlier. The investigator also asked her why she had decided to give the dragon to the butcher. The investigator also asked her why she had decided to give the dragon to the butcher. The guy didn't understand why he had to go to the capital, but the girl dodged the answer by pretending that she wasn't feeling well. So Noah suggested heading home. Kyle remembered that earlier the girl had said she wasn't abandoning the dragon, but was just going to return it to its rightful owner. After she picked up the egg, she went to the post office 4 times. She even sent premium shipping. But by some mistake, the parcel kept coming back. Each time, the recipient was the same person, and it was the capital city of Tezev District Izeth, Countess Lenya Walter. According to the girl, she is the real mistress of the dragon. He didn't understand why she thought that, but he wanted to be sure to check all the information about her when he returned to the capital. And so they were already back home. The girl immediately lay down to lie down. The man told Noah to remember to take her pills, then started to leave. But before he left, he started to say what he knows, that the girl is not understating something. So he would appreciate it if she would accept as an apology for his past rudeness the fact that he doesn't press the girl with questions. But he still suspects her. The girl said something that would help the investigation, so the investigator told her to just wait for news and not to contact anyone. Noah said goodbye to the handsome investigator and he left. The man sat on the bench before leaving and thought about how far he had to travel. Half a day on the train, and after the transfer it would be at least 4 more days. And if he didn't make the night train, he'd have to find a place to stay. At worst, his journey would take 6 days. Kyle had 4 items in his notebook. The first was a missing egg case. The second was the misappropriation of funds in Tezev. The third was the disappearance of a group of slaves at the Noviskos mines. And then there was a 4th item, the murder of Eleanor Assel. Eleanor is a completely different person now, someone whose future will be at the center of the chaos the dragon will cause. Since the man has decided to take her off the list, they are no longer connected, and now he has no reason to travel that far. Now he doesn't have to clean up a horrible mess in a 2-story house, nor does he have to wake up a lazy girl and make her eat. Since Noah is now the dragon's mistress, she can't live a serene life even in the village, and sooner or later they will have to meet again. But suddenly, when he was on his way to his boarding, near the train he saw a lady with a dragon. The girl smiled at the guy and said something that they too would go in search of the egg snatcher, since they promised to help the investigation. It's already time to go for a landing. Looks like the man has a lot of trouble ahead of him. But he wasn't upset, he just smiled. The Loran Empire is divided into 9 large regions. These in turn are divided into districts, which are assigned numbers according to political, economic, and social aspects. The lower the number at the beginning, the closer the district is to a city. The higher the number, the closer to a village. For comparison, the first district in Tezev is Izet, where the upper nobility and the royal family live. The second district is where the lower nobility live, and in the 12th district are the poor. Sorrento is the 9th district in Lunazella, the most remote and now completely undeveloped city. So regardless of the number, it will be quiet and peaceful everywhere. The more or less developed city is the first district, which is called Lunazel, which is where they are heading now. To get to the capital, they'll have to change trains. The guy and the girl were already on the train. The guy was telling the girl to never teach the dragon bad and irresponsible behavior, but she replied that she would never teach him that. The guy couldn't figure out who the real egg snatcher was. A dragon hatched at the end of the Age of Magic. There's no telling how he'll affect the continent. Despite the situation, the Minister of Magic is still on holiday. Also in the newspaper on the front page they saw that there was news about the dragon. It described every suspect including Eleonora Kendrick and Chapayev. Apparently this advert went all over the empire. The girl asked the gentleman in the capital to remember to mention her in the report, that she was doing her best to help the investigation. The man was telling the girl that she should not relax for a second, as she was not only the owner of the dragon but also Eleanor herself. Suddenly there was a very heavy rumble on the train. The girl almost fell, but the man caught her. It was the girl's first time traveling on such trains, so she was a little scared. A saleswoman also passed by them, offering a blanket, a newspaper, coffee, or biscuits. The girl immediately put on her headdress because Kyle had said so. Noah was just about to get hungry and wanted to go get herself something to eat, but Kyle stopped her with his foot. The girl was a little indignant because it was a little rude of him, but he replied that she should not arouse any suspicion of herself. They also noticed something strange. The saleswoman wouldn't go into the other compartments. Besides, the train they were on didn't usually offer food. What Kyle meant was that it wasn't really a saleswoman, it was just pretending to be one. He didn't tell the girl directly because she could hear everything. The man repeated that the girl was being hunted by more than one person. Also, the man decided to ask the girl how she came to know about Lenya Walter. The girl didn't know if she should tell her. The man gave her 30 minutes to think about it, then got up to catch the saleswoman, and ordered the girl to stay in the room and close the curtains not to show her face. A few minutes later, Noah heard a rumbling noise. It fell the salesgirl in their compartment. The man had no choice but to drag her into the compartment. And he started asking her who she really was and what organization she was from, probably the Ulem organization. Noah had heard of this organization. It was a dark criminal organization from the original story, whose main goal was to hunt dragons. They have no moral values and will do anything for profit. But the saleswoman didn't want to tell me anything and said she didn't know anything. Kyle realized that, judging by her disguise, she was just a pawn. So he gave her a choice: either die at the hands of his organization or spend her life behind bars under the protection of the Bureau. The saleswoman didn't believe it, because an investigator can't pass judgment. But it seems she wasn't told about the investigator assigned to Eleanor. There are only 4 men in Laurent who can impose discipline: His Majesty the King, the Minister of Security and Investigations, his deputy, and the Chief Warden. So apart from martial law, a man can open fire on a criminal at any time at his discretion. The salesgirl started cracking up and saying what she was just told to look at her face, and she wasn't going to kill anyone. But she couldn't say more than that because usually people from their organization have an explosive device implanted in their head or heart. It is activated by magic as soon as the person tells any secrets of the organization, which is why she can't say anything. The man offered to take the woman to the Bureau, where she would undergo surgery to remove the device. The most important thing now is to get to the city where there will be security. That's why they are in a very dangerous situation right now. And the girl decides that she should tell the whole truth. She told that there is a book about this universe, a novel that describes this universe. It talks about all its inhabitants and the dragon, and the mistress of the dragon is Lenya. She doesn't know what exactly this fantasy universe is, but she has told everything she knows. The author mainly narrates the development of the protagonist Lenya, as well as the events that follow. The guy blushed a little bit, and the girl told him that he was the main character in the novel, and she realizes how crazy that sounds right now. From the beginning to the end, the novel remains a typical story of promoting good and punishing evil, where a good and just couple deal with bad people, including Eleanor, and those airy lovers. And at the end of the story, the dragon kidnaps his mistress and takes her to another world, and that was the end of the story. Kyle couldn't even imagine such a thing, but he said he understood. He also added that her universe was populated by very strange people who just took other people's names and wrote fictional stories. And he has a right to think so, because this world is too realistic to believe that it is just made up by someone. The girl asked the investigator not to take his words to heart. She herself does not know if Lenya is an egg thief. After Eleanor's death, the plot no longer corresponds to the original. Also, the girl decided to ask if he really has feelings for Lenya, to which he replied that he had never even seen her once. The train stopped suddenly. Now there was a stop at which they had to get off. The man asked Noah not to take off his hat in any way. The girl also wore her trademark sunglasses, in which she could see almost nothing. Kyle blushed when he saw her wearing them, because he didn't know what they were. Kyle stepped back and Miyu was talking to the girl about who and where she was. He told her that there was a bench nearby where she could sit down. 2 men were talking, all the suspects were there. The girl was sitting there thinking that men were going to go to her now. But fortunately it passed. Although the train to Taziva runs only once, there are locomotives attached to it in front and behind. The direction is completely different. The first locomotive of Platform A goes to Tazi via another town, the town they were originally going to go to. And the locomotive that starts from Platform B goes to the west coast to Taziva. At first, the train is a single train, but at the border it splits into 2 locomotives, one traveling via Idman and the other via Watuan. There were 4 on Platform A and 2 on Platform B. Wherever they went now, at least 2 more would go with them. The girl wanted to offer Kyle an overnight stay in Lunazella. As soon as he came to her, she told him that they should stay overnight, but he told her that it wouldn't make much difference. He received a report from the community policing organization saying that a red-haired girl was attacked yesterday. The only way to get to the city is by transfer, so all the spies have flocked to this place. And that's why they need to drop the tail now. And so the man handed the girl 2 tickets, one way and one the other. The plan is, they'll show Leonora getting on a one-way train for the victors to get on. And once there, she uses invisibility magic with the help of a dragon. The magic is simple, so she should be fine. And after all the spies have entered the train, he will signal the girl. Then she'll run to the 9th carriage, which is going the other way. The plan is quite simple. Miyu will be able to maintain invisibility magic for 30 minutes, or else the girls will have a hard time. The girl felt great, so she agreed. With 5 minutes to go, everyone was already being asked to board. The girl purposely took off her headdress so everyone could see her, so the girl decided to hurry to the 9th carriage. She met the investigator. She was nowhere to be seen. The investigator said that 3 took the train one way and 3 more the other. But later, they'll all arrive at Edmana. They'll have to hurry. Suddenly, the girl felt sick. Judging by the attack on her, she was being chased by mages. In Lauren, all those who possess magical powers must register with the Ministry of Magic, and the Ministry in turn tries to monitor them closely. But like any other system, there are drawbacks. What Moo said is that they're getting closer. It wasn't good, and Kyle said that they couldn't go any further and they couldn't move together. Since they can't follow the plan, they'll have to move upstairs. The train has not yet gained speed. It will maintain it until the railway splits at the boundary between Lunazelle and Cezanne. And at that speed, they can travel on the roof of the train. The girl was very scared, so the man suggested if she didn't want to, she could just return Mew to her former appearance, even though the 200 passengers would recognize that she was the owner of the dragon. He knew the girl wouldn't do that, so she agreed and climbed up on the roof. Mew suddenly dropped and was already starting to fly behind the train, but the girl managed to grab him and he didn't fly away. But because he lost control, the magic dissipated and the killer saw them, and he's already pointing a weapon at them to kill them. But in response, he got himself shot by an investigator. She called out to Kyle, but he said that it looked like they would have to split up for a while. He would have to detain them all, and 3 days later at noon, they would have to see each other at Watuan Station. The journey had been worth the effort, and now the loner girl must get to this city. She didn't know what to say to him, and he wished her luck. All those involved in killing Eleanor, he had killed them. In an hour, the train was due to arrive at Listu Station, and from there, a fast train would follow to Edmond. That was the driver's voice. Kyle immediately headed towards him, after which he pointed a gun at him. The man guessed that the driver was not from Laurent's railway company, and he immediately shot him in the arm and leg, after which he started asking where this train was going. He ordered him to speak as the chip in his hand had already been destroyed. He's on his way to the Ministry of Magic. The driver told me that he had met a man in a hood. He had the badge of an employee of the Ministry of Magic and had ordered the capture of Eleanor Essel. Surprisingly, no one was going to kill her. They just wanted to take her prisoner. He didn't plan to go near her until he got the order. That meant only one thing. The Baroness was being tried by people other than Ulam. Who wanted to kidnap her is an employee of the Ministry of Magic. He was inactive all these years until she left Sorrento. He may be directly connected to Eleanor's murder. Basically, it all fits. He killed the Baroness and now he's devised a plan to capture her. But then he must have been aware by now that it wasn't the old Eleanor. He hired assassins in Ulam to capture the girl in Eleanor's body. Kyle stopped the train and decided to get off. He began to worry about how Noah would be alone. His guards immediately ran up to him. They said that there was an emergency call from the train. One of the passengers called them. He told them to immediately send a request to the ministry for the right to investigate the relationship between Ulam and the Ministry of Magic. Only the main ones to do all this without making too much noise. Noah and the baby were in their carriage at this time. The baby was asleep and the girl was very sore as her body had not yet recovered from the previous magic. She was exhausted very quickly, and now she needed to get to the capital as soon as possible and cut off her ties with Lenya. She didn't know if she would be able to see Kyle again, but she really wanted to see him. She still had a whole day left, so she needed to get a good night's rest. But in the night, the girl woke up to a sound. She saw the way Mew was looking out the window. He said that he looked up at the sky. It was shining when it was dark. He did not understand why it was so. The girl told him that these glowing lights are called stars. Mew started to say that he had seen something like that when he was in the egg. Noah wondered what exactly he saw up there. Noah was so busy and tired because of her work that she didn't have the energy to look at the sky. And now here she is on the train looking up at the shining stars. Life can be pretty amazing sometimes. And then there are the bad guys chasing her. But suddenly her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door, where she heard her grandmother's voice saying that she had mixed up her places and had nowhere to sleep. She asked her to find a place to sleep. Since it was rude to refuse, she decided to let her grandmother come into her compartment. But she also saw that there was a guy in a Macintosh next to her grandmother. The man in the cloak immediately took a seat beside the girl. And when he took off his hood, there the girl saw a very handsome guy. Not even Kyle had impressed her as much as he had. "It's been a long time," he said. The girl didn't understand what he wanted from her, and she didn't understand why she felt so empty. The old lady who was with him suddenly disappeared. The guy told Eleanor that it was simple magic and asked her if she had decided to break up with him, after which he said that he had saved her so many times, and kissed her hand. Noah didn't know what to do, what to say to get out of the situation, so she asks him who he is. She decided to pretend Eleanor had lost her memory. Eleanor added that she didn't understand why he was breaking out into a stranger's compartment. She was very tired now, and she didn't like the fact that some strangers were bothering her. The boy thought there was no such thing. The girl grabbed him and started saying that this is the first time we've seen each other, and you're already on a first-name basis. Started asking who he was and how old he was. He started to say that he was her friend, her lover, and the man who had saved her life and knew her better than anyone else. Better than Kyle Renaud. He wanted to get closer to the girl, but she immediately bounced away from him. She started to say that she had forgotten a lot of things, including him. He was the type that was not wearable. The guy was sad that she didn't remember him. He said if Eleanor got back together with him, he wouldn't say that. Eleanor said that he was a pervert who knew that the girl had lost her memory and therefore imagined her to be her lover. And in response, the boy decided to ask the same question, how he knew it was really Eleanor. He assumed that someone had kicked Eleanor out and moved into her body. This guy used his magic on the girl, but the boy protected her. He said he just wanted to see if she was real and didn't want to hurt her. And he also asked who the little guy who reflected the magic was. The girl did not want to tell him anything and told him to leave her compartment. She used her magic, thereby tying his hands, after which she pushed him out of her compartment. The girl had just left Sorrento, and her life had become a minefield. She didn't know if she could make it to the capital. She wanted to get off the train and spend the night somewhere, because she needed to get there as quickly as possible. But she didn't seem to have a choice. The next morning, when she was walking outside her compartment, she saw a guy smiling at her. He greeted her, asking how she was doing, telling her that he had slept in the corridor, asking how she was feeling and all that sort of thing. But the girl flung him away from her again with magic to rest. The girl went to the telephone and rang the security bureau and asked to be connected to the Lunazella office. She told them that yesterday she had reported an attack on a train traveling towards Edmond and was asked to wait. Mr. Renaud answered the phone because he asked to be connected immediately to the girl who reported the attack. He understood what the matter was and what had happened. The girl told him that she felt like she had a cold and her body was breaking, and there were a lot of bruises on her shoulder. But the man told her that it was just a slight cold that would do her immune system good. The girl didn't like that and pouted. Still, Kyle was worried about the girl and wondered if she had taken her medicine. He can't talk to her kindly right away since she's relaxed. So he asks her where she got off the train. The girl told him everything about how she got off and wants to take a bath and clean herself up. The man also said that there were traces of magic on the local railway, so he had no chance to go right away. He doesn't know when he'll be able to go, but they found evidence yesterday that proved a link between the Ministry of Magic and yesterday's attack. For that reason, he can't ask them for help. And the minister isn't on site at the moment. If she has any problems when she arrives in Watuana, she should not wait for him and go to the capital. Voltaire's leniency is monitored by a public order organization, so she needn't worry. The girl replied that she missed him, so she hoped he would hurry up. And so the girl continued her journey by train. In it, she ordered some very tasty sweets, which she wanted to eat with her baby dragon. Suddenly, the same guy appeared in front of them. He's like a stalker. The girl wanted him to leave her alone, but he said he was just worried about his lover, and the loss of memory had no bearing on his past life. The girl didn't understand why she was dating a man whose virtues began and ended with a pretty face. The guy introduced himself, saying his name was Adrian. The girl liked his name. She decided to ask Adrian how they broke up 2 years ago, to which he replied that it was because they had a big fight. And Noah asked him if he still had any hopes for her. In her mind, she didn't want to start anything with him, since his beloved was already dead. Her words made the mug burst in the air with his anger. It looked like he really did love Eleanor. Maybe the girl had hurt him. The guy started to say that he wasn't going to interfere with her or harm her in any way. He just wanted one last chance. The girl told him that he could continue to follow her, but that he should deal with the people who were following her now, and with those who would do so in the future. And so they arrived at Watuana. The girl was shocked at how beautiful it was. It was her first time there. When the guy tried to hug the girl, the dragon pushed him away, telling him not to get attached to Noah since she doesn't like it. The girl wanted to go to the hospital first, then stop by the community policing organization and contact Kyle, then continue on her way tomorrow morning. Adrian added to the girl that there was a passenger liner that traveled from Watuanu to Tazeva. Depending on weather conditions, the journey may take a little longer, but it's much more comfortable. There are doors. The food is much better than the food I get on the train. But the girl preferred to go by train because on the liner, if something happened to her, there would be nowhere to run. Besides, she's seasick. Adrian often received messages about the accessory, as he had a lot of things to do and the girl told him to go to them. Usually when he was called to go somewhere, he didn't want to go, but when he was sent away, he was tempted to stay. The girl couldn't figure out who this guy was, the most common bum, though considering how he dealt with the mercenaries, he wasn't exactly helpless. Adrian seems to have more than just love for Eleanor. After all, couples who've been through different life situations have different feelings for each other. Maybe it's connected to her death. The next day, the girl wanted to go on the train, but she couldn't because she was refused because of the attack on the train. Now all the railways are blocked. The culprits were also spotted in the train on their way to Watuana, so a mandatory check is now being conducted. And they didn't know how long the temporary shutdown would last. Noah came back to the guys and told them that traffic is now suspended and many people are just going to the liner, so they'd have to get a room for a few days. And they told the blonde guy to get a separate room. When the girl came to her room, she was shocked because it was much more luxurious than she thought. She had to walk for so many days, change from train to train, sleep on narrow beds, and now it was a great pleasure to sleep on the bed. It's been 4 days since they've been in this room and Noah is suddenly sick. Mayu was sad because of this. He was alarmed and decided to do something about it. He went to the other floor on the stairs and jumped to the phone. Adrian noticed this and decided to go to the girl while the baby was gone. When he came to her, he saw that she was asleep. He ran his hand through her hair and remembered what had happened to them before. He also noticed that the girl's cheeks were very hot, and he now understood why she did not want to leave the room. When Adrian decided to go for a cold towel, he heard Eleonora mumbling something, asking where the butler had gone. The boy didn't understand what butler she was talking about. Eleanor had been sent to the person in charge of the missing egg case. Investigator Kyle, maybe she meant him. He didn't realize when they'd become such friends. Afterwards, the girl said she was going to go wash up. At that time, the boy was already on the phone calling Kyle. He was crying and told him that she was sick. Kyle was shocked that she was still not well. He thought she was fine. Moo asked his uncle when he was coming and said that if Noah died, he would kill him. Kyle said he wasn't the one to sulk at, since her illness was more his fault, which caused the boy to start crying even harder, but Kyle started to calm him down, saying he was wrong. He told him to take it easy and give Noah a couple of days rest, and he would try to come back tomorrow. The boy agreed and headed back. The boy stealthily approached the room and started telling Adrian to leave. The boy greeted the dragon. He didn't even notice that he was back, and Adrian started to tell the kid that he was not an ordinary person and had magic. The boy didn't know what to do, since no one was supposed to know about his real identity. But two people did. He wanted to kill Adrian, but suddenly their conversation was interrupted by Noah. She woke up because she had a headache. She started asking Adrian when she realized the boy was a dragon. The boy could see the cold sweat pouring out of her. He also noticed that the pills the girl was taking were a magic stabilizer. He didn't understand why she was taking them. He said that if she'd made the connection with the dragon, her body didn't need it. And then the boy realized that Eleanor's connection to the dragon was not complete, and he realized that Adrian wasn't even able to control her magic, which made her body exhausted. Noah asked the dragon to throw the man out of the room, which he did. He realized that there was some obstacle that was keeping them from making a connection, and he wanted to take it away before the connection was perfect. The obscure accessory kept beeping at him, but he switched it off anyway. So the next day they sat in a room and waited for the Minister of Magic. Many people were waiting for him because the railway had a heavy magic that he could remove, but constant appeals to the minister were unsuccessful. At first, only the Security Bureau wanted to solve everything, but they didn't succeed, so they asked for help from the Ministry of Magic. Because of the railway stoppage, a lot of people are stuck here just like the girl, and everyone is in a hurry to go to the liner, and it was very hard to get even one ticket to the liner now. And now the girl didn't know how to get home, and she had a headache. But then suddenly Adrian appears near the girl. The girl was fed up with him, so she tied him up again and dragged him behind her. Last time she made the mistake of just kicking him out, but now she's decided to hand him over to the Security Bureau. The guy told her he was worried because she hadn't left the room all day. Adrian asked the girl not to take him to the Security Bureau, but the girl took him anyway, and said she wanted to complain about this stalker and tell him to get arrested. The Bureau took him away, and when they saw him, they wondered. They then decided to approach Noah and ask for her ID card, as they needed to know the identity of the applicant. Another guard noticed that it was a magic rope that was not registered with the Ministry of Magic. Then the girl was grabbed and taken to a room. The girl managed to get to Vatuan and hide her identity, but now by her own efforts came to the guards where her identity was revealed. It was not a very smart move. The guy kept telling her it was her fault and he said she shouldn't come here. That's when Kyle went to the bureau to see the girl he'd been told about. He was told that she came in with an unknown male. They tried to identify him, but the device didn't work on him. They also had a small child with them. They wanted to take him away, but he fought and did not want to leave the girl. They also did not manage to find out the identity of the child. The girl sat in her room and was sad. She felt bad as she was still sick. So Kyle came in and started asking how the girl was feeling. She immediately ran up to him and started asking him when he had time to get here and saying that she was really worried. Kyle apologized to her. Kyle also asked why the minister was with a girl. Noah was shocked that the guy was the minister. Kyle told him that he hadn't answered them for a long time and it was time to go back to the capital. The girl started to remember the accessory that kept beeping at him. Kyle also asked if the girl had any connection, but the girl only said that the minister had a very negligent attitude towards work. Kyle started telling him that the guy was Eleanor's lover. Noah told him that she had told him that she had lost her memory, and he seemed to believe her. Adrian wanted to find out what was going on between them, but the girl starts kicking him because he is a very irresponsible worker. Adrian thought that she was treating him like this because he could tell her everything about what he'd learned. The girl remembered what he knew all about Moo being a dragon, and if he tells everyone, it'll be very bad for the girl. The girl threatened him that if he told, she'd have the dragon burn him. But the boy saw how Eleanor had changed since then, and knew that she could not order such a thing to a small child. So he said he'd keep the secret if she promised something in return. After she returned to Tezeva, she would continue to see him, about twice a week, because he was interested in the dragon like all mages. So he wanted to watch it, and if she allowed it, he would discover a way to safely harness the dragon's magical power. But suddenly, during the time he was crouched over the maidenhead, Kyle's mug fell over. Because of this, Adrian quickly ran away before they got mad at him. Afterwards, Kyle asked Noah to give him some time. The investigator began to say that he realized that the girl was isolated from society, but that she did not seem to have read any newspapers. He said that the young man was known for having been Minister of Magic at a young age. He didn't understand why the girl didn't know him, as he was usually on the front page. The girl apologized to Kyle for acting without thinking. The guy was worried about the girl and started asking how she was feeling and if she had a fever. The guy immediately noticed that she was using Miyu's magic, and it looked like she was definitely in trouble. The girl had told him that he had just attacked her first. Since it wasn't a big deal, Kyle decided to leave it out. The next day after lunch, Kyle would have to pick up the girl, as they would have to hit the road, and they would have to go on a passenger liner. He has the tickets and all she has to do is follow him. If she and Miyu keep quiet, nothing will happen. The girl also offered to let him sleep over, but after an awkward look, she said she was joking. And the next day, the liner went ashore. This liner is mainly for aristocrats and rich people. It has everything luxurious and has everything for a comfortable stay. The girl didn't understand how she would be able to pass, as everyone was checked for documents and she didn't have any. And as they approached, Kyle presented his supervisor's ID and said that this girl was his wife. And as expected, they were successfully passed over. Their Renaud family is acting as guarantors. If the girl is asked to prove her identity in the future, Kyle said she should simply pretend to be the Renaud family. Her biographical details would not be determined, but there would be no problem with an authentication request, since the Renaud family would assume all responsibility. The girl was also wondering if she could get a loan on them. But the man added that their surname could only be used for the duration of the investigation and in case of emergency. And so they came to the liner. It was incredibly dewy. The 5th floor was only available to first-class passengers. They don't need to be there because if they show their face, there will be problems. Suddenly, when they got into the lift, the girl noticed that there were only floors 3, 4, 5, but no floors 1 and 2. Most likely the first and first floors are only for the service staff. The guy in the lift confirmed these words and said that it is a central lift for passengers, and it is not connected to the magic room for safety. When they got out of the lift and were about to enter their room, they heard the words, "Mr. Walter." The boy and the girl immediately turned round. It was Mr. Kelt and Walter. Kyle told the girl to quickly go to her room and he would go, but the girl had an idea. She abandoned Eleanor's invention. Then they went into the room and the girl said they could follow up. It's Largo's pupil. After that, the girl opened the monitoy and everything worked. There was good hearing and seeing of their conversation. They talked about how they got here and asked where they were going. The man said that his daughter suddenly needed to go to the capital. That meant that Lenia was here too. It was strange, as she should have been in the capital investigating. The man also said that he had heard that this year, due to the lack of rain, there were many problems in managing the farm. But rain is the will of the heavens, and there is nothing to be done. Fortunately, the daughter often visited Huangxiong and expanded the distribution network, which helped to avoid some losses. And there she is. But it looks like she saw that pupil and kicked it, then the connection went dead. She seemed to realize that someone was watching her. It was strange that she was here, as she was supposed to be in the capital under investigation. As far as they found out, when she got off the train in Sorrento the same day, Lenia took the train to Tezeva. The head of the Metropolitan Police Department has confirmed the whereabouts of Walter's daughter. The morning before yesterday, a report was received that she had been in Walter's mansion in the capital for more than 5 days. There can't be 2 women in their family, as the Count only calls Lenia Walter his daughter. The man, of course, trusts the subordinate who confirmed the whereabouts of Walter's daughter, but he can't believe it 100% because he hasn't seen it with his own eyes. So far, they've only visually confirmed that the girl is Lenia, traveled to the Sorrento, and now she's on the same liner with them. And what's worse, she seems to be aware that they've been watching her. It's unlikely she'd accidentally kick the largest pupil. Noah wasn't sure now that Lenia Walter had stolen the dragon egg. Last time she had said she only suspected her because she was with the dragon in the novel. The man was no longer convinced that his daughter could be a criminal either. However, the situation is as if she is hiding something. Either there is a doppelganger in the capital or a subordinate made a mistake. If a person uses a doppelganger, then he is definitely hiding something, and to write off the fact that she kicked the pupil as an accident was also difficult. But it was for the best. Noah couldn't understand what he meant. Like Noah said, "You can't escape in the middle of the sea," he said with a flick of his weapon. First, he wanted to go to the captain's cabin and contact the public order organization by radio, then request a special warrant for Lenia so he could arrest her immediately upon arrival in port. The man told Noah that they should make a small change in the plan to hide the dragon's existence. If the girl felt the situation had become dangerous, she could use Miyu's magic, and he would take care of the consequences. The girl had only one thing to worry about, her well-being. Miyu had promised that he would protect Noah, after which the man got out and started on his way. There was no one along the way and it was empty. At this time, an incomprehensible black creature approached the pupil and took it away. And so it had been a long time. The girl was already starting to get worried. The boy told her that he had been awake when Mr. Renaud left, and that he had gone away in the night and never returned, but had said he would come soon. The girl couldn't believe that he hadn't sent any sign all day. Noah asked Mu to try to find out what was wrong with Kyle by using magic. But when he tried to do it, he couldn't find him because the liner was sailing with magic. But he doesn't think he's around. There was no telling what might have happened to him. He could hardly have run into the same gang that had chased them on the train. The girl was scared. She was afraid that Kyle might get hurt. So the girl decided to go and look for Kyle. She took her headdress and went to look with the baby. They'd checked a lot of places, but they hadn't found him. Kyle had disappeared and the girl was coming down the stairs. Suddenly, when the girl turned round, she saw the most familiar face. She had been told it was dangerous to walk here alone. Her dark blonde hair is close to blonde, cold blue eyes, short stature. Looks like Lenya Walter. Lenya immediately ran up to Noah and told her to be quiet and not to attract any attention. Noah immediately asked if she was the one who stole the egg. The girl was stunned. They finally meet and it's the perfect opportunity to break the bond, but Mu has disappeared. Lenya immediately grabbed Noah and spoke so she could hear her carefully. There's only one way down, but she's not going back that way. The only way up is the emergency exit used by the ship's crew. Lenya said what she came to tell her. She didn't know why they were all on the same ship. But she was wrong to think that a passenger liner would be safe for aristocrats. She said she couldn't stand up to them, so she asked Noah to do it. She said that's why she gave the dragon to her. She said that yesterday she saw someone throw a listening device on the floor. She kicked it as soon as she saw it. And it looks like she's about to be killed on this ship. Noah started telling Lenya that it was just her planting it. But suddenly her father started calling her to him. Lenya said things she didn't have time to explain. In a place like this, they attract too much attention. She didn't want to be buried in the depths of this ocean. And she said that tomorrow morning around 3 o'clock or 5 a.m., cabin 409, she'll leave the door open. Right now it would be too difficult for her to answer all the questions. Once she was sure there was no threat on the ship, she would answer all the questions. At this time, Miyu approached the girl, but the girl remained in a stupor. Miyu said there was no one on the third floor. Nav told him she met Lenya, and she thinks she sent the egg to her, because she said that Noah had to save Kyle from someone and meet her at dawn. The girl was even more scared because maybe something very bad had happened to Kyle. From what she could tell, Kyle was somewhere downstairs, but she didn't know the place at all. The girl was starting to cry, but she was just very anxious and scared. Lenya had told her about the way up. Maybe it had something to do with Kyle. Most likely there is another floor below. First, they should take the lift down to the second and first floors. Since there might be a crew there, they should be careful. They wanted to wait until nightfall. And so the night came. Noah brought some medicine in case she had to use magic, and she dressed comfortably and ate. Maybe the man Lenya mentioned was also involved in Eleanor's death. The girl had asked Miyu to use his magibus since Kyle had authorized him, so it must be all right. So they went out. It was very quiet. But suddenly they heard a sound. But luckily it was just a waitress. She asked if Madame needed anything, and how she could help. The girl replied that she just wanted to get some fresh air. The door to the promenade deck is in the other direction, she said, and wished them good luck. Then they decided to go to the lift. Even as they passed the window, their theory was confirmed. And now the liner has come to a complete stop. The girl still in the room had a strange feeling. She didn't realize when exactly it happened. But even considering that the liner had stopped, Yum didn't feel the magic flow under the liner. Someone stopped the ship. Maybe it had been taken over by people who were targeting her. The girl was scared. And so they came to the central passenger lift. It's not connected to the magic room. For safety reasons, it only goes from the 3rd to the 5th floor. So they need to find another lift that the staff use. But suddenly when the girl went into the lift, she saw that there were buttons of the 1st and 1st floor. It was very strange because yesterday when the girl was here, these buttons were not there. I think that's what Lenya was talking about. The sudden appearance of the ground floor button. Lenya's cryptic words. It seemed as if they were luring the girl downstairs. Noah told the baby to stay quietly by her side while they went downstairs, and if he felt anything, he should tell her right away. And when the girl arrived, she went into the room, and there she saw that she was covered in blood. The girl was sure that Mr. Kyle was here. She also wondered whose blood it was. There were shell casings lying there. A valve from a device that controls magic. It seems to have something to do with the liner stopping. Suddenly, the girl stepped on a pool of blood. So Miyu decided to smell it, and after he did, he realized it wasn't the blood of a pickaxe. Miyu told the girl that if she concentrated, she could feel it too. The trajectory of magical power. Suddenly, the girl and everything around her starts to glow. If magic bullets had been used, There should have been traces left behind. But there was a lot of blood and empty shell casings. There must have been more than one or even two people in this place. Since there's blood, but no blood, they can only assume that Kyle survived and escaped. Suddenly, the little boy saw something and decided to see what it was. They could not understand what it was, as there were no other devices anywhere. Also, the girl suddenly looked round as she heard a rumbling sound. It was the sound of a lift. It sounded like someone had arrived at their place. The girl immediately grabbed the baby and ran with him to hide. But as soon as they hid, someone with their black hand covered her mouth. The girl tried to call for help but could not. The unknown man also told her to be quiet. The girl recognized the voice. Touching the guy's face, she realized it was Kyle. Noah immediately started to tell him that she was very worried, to which he replied that he would listen to her later. But for now, let her be quiet. The man added that he was very much worried that the girl wouldn't be able to find her way here, but the good thing was that she had managed. Since the guy left the room, he couldn't realize how much time had passed. He couldn't believe it. His watch had broken, and it took a lot longer than he thought. He too felt the liner stop. The guy said he broke one of the magical mechanisms and threw away the switch for fear it might explode. The girl also noticed that Kyle was hurt, so she decided to touch him. But he bounced away from her and said it was just a scratch and he wasn't hurt, so he didn't even notice it. He decided to change the subject to how the girl had dinner. The girl was shocked because it didn't matter now. The guy told her that he had managed to find an emergency exit used by the crew, but it was blocked by magic. It's impossible to get close to it. It's probably the only way out, so they have to get there first. He also added that the kid might try to dispel the magic, and he couldn't go with them now, because he has to catch one more person, the one who just left the room. The girl didn't understand why they couldn't just go together and tell the kid to seal the place up. Lock him in here and search him when they got to town. But then there's the risk of destroying evidence, and he might know how to get out of here. Kyle told the girl that when she walked a little way, she would see a ladder. She has to go up it and open an iron door. The guy would lead him there. 737. Kyle added that the baby can overdo it when dispelling magic, so it's best to be reassured and have your medication with you. After that, the girl headed off to complete the task. Kyle told her not to cause trouble and not to touch anything. The girl looked at her watch and thought that if she hurried to Lenya's room, she could make it in time for her arrival. The girl also remembered that Kyle's watch had broken, so she gave him hers. The man thanked the girl. He promised he'd be back by 6, and then the girl and the baby left. The kid took one last look at Kyle and heard the smell of blood. It looked like it was Kale's blood and his incomprehensible wound. The girl remembered what Lenya had told her and what time they should be there. Noah was far more delayed than she thought, so she decided to hurry. But she was beginning to suspect something, as it all looked suspicious to her. They came to that very door. The door was blue in color, and it was completely glowing because it was sealed with magic. The kid had to neutralize it. He said that he could neutralize her, but the main thing was that the girl was fine. The girl shouldn't have fainted because she took the medicine, and so the little one went to the door and put his hand there. He began to use his power to the max, and after a few minutes he successfully managed to dispel the magic. The girl felt sick anyway. The boy apologized, but it wasn't his fault. Kyle was taking pictures of all the evidence he could see, but suddenly some man came up to him. Right away I started telling him he didn't stand a chance, because the man could barely stand on his own 2 feet. Kyle told him to testify to the investigation and then keep him alive. The guy was surprised that Kyle was very calm, since Kyle's body wasn't in the best condition either. The guy told him that all he had to do was remove the chip from his body. The man with white hair began to realize that it was connected to the mark on his ears. Their conversation was interrupted by other men in cloaks who told him to be captured and killed. Noah and the baby heard some very loud noises, but they decided not to stop. They were hoping that everything would be okay. The aristocrats on the liner were already starting to resent the fact that the liner had stopped. The aristocrats on the liner had already started to complain that the liner had stopped. But when Noah came to the door, she saw that it was closed. Then the girl asked the baby to open the door. The kid immediately opened the door, whereupon the girl stepped inside. And when she looked around, she saw Lenya, who was very badly frightened and was lying on the floor with a knife. Noah immediately ran up to her and asked why she had left the door closed. Lenya apologized to her as the ship had stopped, and the girl had been gone for a long time, so she thought she had failed. Noah began to tell her that because she and the baby were not fully bonded, the girl's condition had deteriorated. She was on the verge of life and death here, so she wanted to cut off this resonance as soon as possible. Lenya looked closely at the boy and looked out for the dragon in him. Then Noah took Lenya's hand and saw that she also had a sign that came from the dragon. The boy was then asked to put his hand on it. The boy agreed and started putting his hand on hers. After the boy laid her down, things began to sparkle and sew all around. Afterwards, Noah's heartbeat and breathing stabilized. She felt like she had a new body. The girl became as easy and comfortable as possible. At this time, Kyle pushed a guy with white hair with his foot. Then he started strangling him and telling him not to move because if he moved, he would die of blood loss. 777. But the guy with the white hair started calling his boss. But somehow he was under a mask, and it turned out that the guy he'd just strangled was just a toy and not real. After that, everything around the man began to smoke. He went into a stupor. Noah was feeling just amazing at this time. But for some reason, Lenia scurried away from her and was afraid. Noah was suddenly overwhelmed with strength, making her unable to control it. After which the boy immediately started hugging the girl as he was now providing no harm to her. Suddenly there were sounds of gunshots. It seemed that many of the first-class passengers were awake too. Lenia was hardly in a condition to talk, so she decided to postpone the questioning until later. Then told her she hadn't opened the door for anyone and she'd be back soon. When the girl came out, everyone immediately started recognizing her. After making a full connection, all the people she encounters look at her with horror and try to avoid her, though she was sometimes recognized in everyday life. Perhaps now it was all about the aura from the dragon's imprinting. After which she immediately ran to the lift in order to get out. There is no point in hiding his identity now. The girl can now fully understand what he wants and what is in his heart. All this time they were both having a hard time because of the incomplete connection. The girl now wanted to drink warm cocoa and go to bed. On waking up, take a hot bath prepared by Mr. Butler. And when you get out of the bath, have a nice breakfast. When the girl came out on deck, she saw that it was getting light. She saw the highest point on the deck, after which she decided to climb there. She flew with the dragon there. The girl told the little boy to remember not to hurt or kill people. He should just listen carefully to Uncle Kyle. At this time, Kyle realized what the villain had released was hallucinogenic smoke. It looked like he was going to miss it now, even though the perpetrator was right in front of his nose. But suddenly the atmosphere changed. The guy had felt something like this before, but he didn't realize when it was. A man suddenly found himself on deck, whereupon he was shocked at what he saw. He saw a huge dragon looking at the ship. This dragon was several times bigger for their liner. But he also noticed that the guy in the Macintosh started running away. He reacted quickly, after which he shot him, and the cloak guy fell overboard. The dragon was hanging around the ship. It ate that guy Kyle shot. The sight was as beautiful as possible and not unusual. Afterwards, Kyle asked the dragon to fly up to him. He told the dragon to spit out what was in his mouth, and he spit out all the parts that were on board. It was just as Kyle had thought. This guy was just a toy, too. Then in the engine room, he definitely shot a man. But as he got closer, all he saw were machine parts. It seems to be substitution magic, but it is so highly confident that even Eleanor Asil had difficulty with it. It's not the kind of power that can be wielded by some petty pawn. Throughout the night, the man had fought living people, but they didn't seem to be real, so now the investigator couldn't be sure of anything. Adrian at this time was saying that there was nothing good in having a power you couldn't control. He was too reckless, not knowing that the reason for the unstable connection was Countess Walter. The guy had no choice but to kill her. That's what he decided to do, and he said her death wouldn't even be noticed. The girl's last words were that he would be found one day. He was then noticed by one of the workers and asked him what he was doing here. But the guy had already managed to change into a similar uniform, and managed to successfully get out of it. At that time, Noah was lying on the bed. The girl said that she was cold and wanted to close the window. Then the window slammed shut very hard with magic. Kyle had told her that she should be careful what she thought and what she wanted for each other. The guy gave her cocoa and told her to rest. Yesterday, the girl was told that Count Walter's young lady had been locked in a cabin under pretense of protection. And on their arrival in the city, they would be taken at once to the Bureau of Investigation, and the liner scrutinized. The girl suddenly started to smell some strange odor and asked the guy to come over to her. But he ignored her and said that it would be better if the girl continued to pretend to be Eleanor Asil, as she had done in front of the minister. Then he went to check the situation on deck. The girl couldn't understand why he was avoiding her, after which she decides to use magic. With her gaze, she closed the door and stopped Kyle from coming out, whereupon the girl immediately jumped out of bed and ran towards him. The guy didn't realize what she was doing. The girl moved closer to him, wanting to sniff him harder. She heard a very strange smell of antiseptic, after which she wanted to see what he had under his jacket. But the guy wouldn't let her do that, and said that some passengers were hurt as a result of today's commotion. And maybe he picked up the scent when he went through the aid station. The girl also added that the wound on the guy's face was very deep, and decided to ask him if he was okay. As the man looked at the girl, he remembered the old Eleanor. Then he told the girl that he was fine, and he added that there's hardly any evidence left, so he doesn't know anything yet. He plans to collect and review the records and the engine room. The girl remembered that there were a lot of spare parts, and it didn't look like they had just fallen off. It looked like the guy had shot something, but it wasn't clear what it was, to which the man replied that he had shot a live person. At least he looked that way before the shot. The switch magic the girl might have thought made sense. But there's a catch. It's known as one of the most difficult. Even genius wizards like Eleanor had a lot of trouble with it, so it's hard to tell if it was her. Arrogant magic. Complicated even for Eleanor, the girl immediately surmised that it might be the blonde boy who had been hitting on her. He seemed to be quite talented, having risen to Minister of Magic at such a young age. Kyle is told that Eleanor's body has been taken over by another man, but he can't help the repulsive feeling he gets when he looks at her. He feels guilty for being cold-blooded. After the baby took flight, he came to the girl's room and ran to cuddle. The boy hugged her and said he saw the ground. He came back because the girl told him to come back as soon as he saw her. The girl immediately looked out the window, and it was true, they were already approaching the capital. Upon arrival in the capital, a squad of Kale's subordinates were already waiting for them. One of them was the most important, Penelope. She told her boss that the car was ready, but she walked up to Noah and told Eleanor to surrender her weapon. I think she was talking about the dragon boy. But Kyle started defending her and saying that he had personally checked her out and could assure her that she was no threat. Penelope was shocked, as it was Eleanor herself, but the man replied not to provoke her. The girl accidentally started using her magic. After that, they were allowed into the car. The girl started crying in the car and said that she couldn't control her magic at will. The man understood that it was difficult to deal with the dragon's power, but if the girl continued like this, it would be difficult for the guy to take the girl's side. Noah was really trying hard. 850. But perhaps because the baby got angry with Penelope, the girl found it harder to control herself. Then Kyle took the kid and said he'd support him for a while. Perhaps the more he clings to the girl, the more impact he has. The boy immediately hugged the man. Noah was shocked because she didn't realize when they got so close. Maybe it was his uncle giving him candy. But Moo replied that he liked people Noah liked too, after which a silence passed between them. And the girl said she thought it would be easier to control the magic power away from the baby. Here they are arriving on the scene. This is the National Bureau of Investigation. One of the maids picked up the girl's suitcase but accidentally dropped it, after which she immediately started begging her for mercy. She had made a mistake and she was sorry. Noah replied that there was nothing wrong with it and it was fine. The girl didn't understand why she was on her knees apologizing to her, but the man added that the girl was Eleanor Assel. Eleanor was known to oppress those she considered beneath her, and it seems that she considered all the people of the world to be inferior. If you listen to all these stories about Eleanor's atrocities, you'd think she was a complete psychopath. But Adrian loves her very much. Also, the girl noticed a crowd of people. She thought they were waiting for them, but they weren't. Then the finance minister came up to them and started greeting Eleanor. The minister talked about breaking up with Adrian and how she was very loud, but for some reason he made the guy the victim. Suddenly the emperor himself approached them. Kyle said he was on his way to see him. The emperor came as soon as he heard the ship had arrived in port. The girl missed greeting with the emperor, as she didn't know how to greet him. The emperor realized they'd broken the egg, and asked the girl how it was. Also, the minister was very angry with Eleanor, as she did not want to answer His Majesty's question and scolded her. For some reason, this man is always trying to hurt her, and he called her shameless. The girl was beginning to think about just finishing him off, but Kyle kept her from doing anything rash. But the girl could not raise why she started thinking about it, to kill someone. Also, after she calmed down, she said that she was ready to cooperate with the bureau chief, and for that she had come to the capital. She didn't understand why she had to listen to the minister's rude words. The minister immediately started apologizing. Kyle also said that it would be better if the boy stayed with him longer. He would take care of him. The girl agreed, because when they were near each other, she couldn't control her strength. Nu agreed, but on the condition that if the girl was in danger, he would come immediately. And so they entered their room. It was as beautiful as it could be. Who would have thought that the person who was assisting the investigation would live in such a luxurious place? Kyle said that this is where members of the imperial family or aristocrats called as witnesses stay. However, the door would be locked and the room would have video surveillance. But the girl didn't even listen to that, and wanted to go straight to the comfortable bed. But the man stopped her and asked her if she agreed, to which the girl said yes. Then he took her into the bathroom and told her to change before going to bed. He took her and told her to do what he said, and he had to go somewhere. After that, the guy left. The warden on the way was told that he was putting himself in great danger if he didn't treat the wound, and it looked like it had already opened up several times more. But he replied that he was fine, and if anything happened, he would give first aid, and asked where Lenia was. Penelope tried to talk him out of it, to tell him to get some rest and they would take care of it. But the man only handed her the video of what had happened on Angelica. He said to break it down by time frame. He would personally interrogate Asil, and he said they shouldn't talk to her, much less be rude. If they provoke her, they'll only make things worse. He also added that they shouldn't give her too many snacks and make sure she ate well. That the captain was trying to please Asil's taste was rather suspicious. She was sure that something serious had happened on the ship. Suddenly she saw something very suspicious there, and later the girl was already led to the interrogation. She really liked to do nothing and just enjoy the comfort, but now she will be interrogated in a terrible place. She was told that she was being taken specially for the boss, but suddenly Lenio is still near the girl. It looks like they want to let her go. Noah asked if they were going to release her, but she was told that it was none of her business, and they were only releasing a suspect whose innocence had been proven. The girl was shocked as she told her that Lenya had stolen that egg. And now they're just letting her go. Plus, she acted like they didn't know each other at all. Lenya was taken into custody as soon as she stepped off the liner. With her doppelganger still in the capital, it's only a matter of time before everyone finds out her alibi was fake. Noah grabbed her and started asking her why she was innocent, because she had told her then that if she saved her, she would answer all the questions she had. And now she was silent. But all Noah got in response was that she didn't remember anything. Noah realized what was going on, that she was a traitor, and he's trying to pin the blame on her. Noah was starting to think about killing just her again, but her musings were interrupted by Kyle. The girl again couldn't understand why she was thinking about killing someone again. Kyle told her what she had promised, not to cause trouble. Then he told her to follow him, and he escorted her to the interrogation room. The girl couldn't remember what she'd just been thinking, but she knew one thing. Her condition was not normal. She wanted to talk to Kyle about it if it was just the two of them. Then they entered the room and sat down at the chairs. The girl immediately saw a lot of cameras around and realized that they were not alone. She just wanted to talk in private. The man starts by telling her what the girl's alibi is. All her actions and words are recorded, so he says to answer her honestly and sensibly. What's her relationship with Lenya? She threatened her on board. Noah was in shock, didn't know what he was talking about. But the man started showing pictures. He said he'd taken a statement from Lady Walter and they'd examined the scene, and realized that Noah had not only broken into her quarters, but had tried to put her on. The girl didn't realize whether he meant it or just meant it. She hadn't done anything like that, and he should have known better. Kyle also started asking about why the girl was trying to reconnect with Yulam, a terrorist attack on a train heading for the city, and an explosion in the engine room of an airliner. The girl was present during both incidents, and she also has experience in distributing dangerous magical items. The girl didn't know what to say to him. She only replied that it wasn't like that. The girl didn't do any of this, and he knew it. She didn't understand why he wasn't on her side. He was the only one she trusted with the real her. Even if the others thought she was a criminal and a psychopath, he had to be on her side. Then the man apologized and said that the girl had disabled the central magical device of the palace's protective barrier and sneaked in. Then took an enemy egg out of the incubator, at the hatching stage, and then returned and restored the control unit. After which she went to her village. 905. Kyle began to ask the girl if she had any possessives, or was she acting alone, and what was the reason for the connection to the dragon. The girl said that he was cute. He was so handsome, charming, that she wanted to take him to live with her. The girl wished to reunite with the dragon in order to secretly experiment on him. Noah said she did it all for fun. She just wanted to play with the baby, and didn't think the train would be destroyed and the liner stopped. She had no intentions of hurting anyone or destroying public order. She just wanted to spend the rest of her life in peace and quiet. After which, Kyle decides to ask her again why she threatened Lenya Walter, but she replied that she had no such thought. There was a misunderstanding after making the connection with the dragon. She had trouble controlling her magic power, so she made a mistake. If it was a threat, she can apologize. Noah could understand why he was accusing her of something she hadn't done. Of course, he might have his reasons, but even so, it was very unfair. Noah also added that if she wanted to kill her, she wouldn't be here right now. The man then said that they had finished the interrogation, and that the recording of the interrogation would be transmitted immediately. He was told that the recording had been received. They would discuss everything with the deputy minister. But in the meantime, he was told to inform Eleanor of the court date. The girl didn't understand what was going on and why the court date had already been set. Looks like all those cameras were off. Kyle told the girl that they had done a good job. Then he sat down and asked her if she was surprised. The girl looked pale, but she said she wasn't. He said he'd switched off all the transmitters, so they had another half hour. But the man didn't understand why the girl was crying. She started telling him that the guy was very, very annoying, and why she should tolerate such a relationship in such a place. Even if people don't know, they shouldn't behave like that. Even though she didn't do anything, he still asked her. The man asked her to calm down, but the girl was already on her way out. The guy immediately got up and went to stop her. All he wanted was for her to listen to him, but the girl wouldn't listen to him. She was very upset and was crying. The man tried to apologize to her. He then told her to just sit down and he would explain everything. The girl agreed. He told me that Lenya Walter denies her guilt. She hasn't said a word to her since she got off the ship. She refused to answer from start to finish. Noah added that there's a doppelganger in Tezev. Isn't that proof? But when they arrived there and started searching her estate, the only answer was that she'd left the place back then. Kyle's subordinate who reported it said he saw her, but one side claims that the investigator mistook the maid for Mrs. Walter. She does not intend to cooperate, so it is categorically difficult to prove a doppelganger. Lenya Walter, or the woman believed to be her double, never entered the imperial palace. On the day the egg disappeared, the palace's security barrier recognizes the identity of those who enter and automatically records them. They followed everyone who entered and left that day, but there was no record of Mrs. Walter among them. He does not know what pressure was put on her, but immediately after her statement to the Countess, he gave orders for the girl's arrest. It's probably going to be hard for the girl to get off the hook after that. Dumping everything on an innocent man is the best thing she can do. He's really sorry, but it's the only way she can get out of the situation as quickly as possible. Admit the wine and get a reasonable punishment. The girl was afraid of going to jail, but Kyle said that wasn't going to happen. The trial will be a mere formality. A dragon has appeared, and it will be a great pity to lose the opportunity to experience the rebirth of magic after 500 years. According to the experts, Eleanor's punishment is either a share of the estate or community service, and no more. Later, Kyle and his lawyer brought a lot of papers and said that it should be a letter where the girl should repent. On all these papers, you should write everything in such a way that the girl was wrong and it won't happen again. The girl was in shock and didn't realize if it had any effect. 1 or 2 leaves will not carry any value, so for the incomparable Eleanor there must be a lot of them, because she's violent and she has 15 convictions. If she writes 100 or 200 or better 300 such messages, people will think that this isn't the cold-blooded Eleanor they all know. She said she was wrong, apologizes and vows to be a different person, and that's why it makes sense. Giving jail time to the mistress of a dragon that appeared half a millennium later is very outrageous. The letter can already be considered an acquittal, the trial just a scripted performance. The girl was very sad because she would have to write about something she had not even done and on 300 pages. She didn't know what she could think of to fill them all. Kyle told the girl what he'd already said, that he hadn't slept in days trying to succeed in her sentence, and so she had to make the best of it. The Noviskosh mine disappearance case, the Eleanor murder case. Lenya Walters' covert investigation interrogates assassins captured after Operation Chip Position. The guy had a lot of other things on his mind that he hadn't solved. Suddenly someone summoned him. It was strange since no one usually summons him when he's in the interrogation room. Kyle was told he had something to say and asked if he was interrogating Eleanor right now. There's nothing wrong here and he'll report back later. But the man got up and said he had to leave for a while, since he has to check what's going on in there. But the girl stopped him, saying that they would go out together, and she would now write it all up very quickly. I don't know about the others, but at least Mr. Kyle shouldn't be like this. There's only one person in the world who knows the real Noah. Kyle decided to ask the girl what she had looked like before she had taken over Eleanor's body. Noah told me she had brown hair. Where she lived, most people had black hair, and her color was considered rare, though it was hard to call it special compared to what was happening now. The color of her eyes was brown. She wished she could go back to her body, then she wouldn't have to endure this torment. Kyle also wondered if she came back, what she was going to do if that happened, if it was even possible, and so she's filled out enough paperwork for today. After which they left together today. The girl wanted to lie around all day, but it wasn't that simple. On the table where they had just sat, something incredibly shiny was spotted. Penelope at this time heard about them talking about the real Eleanor, but she didn't understand what they were talking about. She wanted to find out from the boss what was going on. Since there's a trial coming up, she can't meet him, so she decides to keep what she hears a secret. Suddenly the girl heard a knock. She immediately closed her box. After that she opened the door, and there she saw the minister. The Minister of Magic greeted her. Penelope couldn't figure out what the case was about. He said he'd heard that they'd discovered evidence of their involvement in the last train incident, and because of the sensitivity and confidentiality of the matter, he decided to come in person. Penelope told him that the warden was in the middle of an interrogation, and the law forbids calling during the interrogation, so he'll have to wait. 969. The minister said to let her find out how long it would take, and after she left to ask about how much was left, he wasted no time in going to the box. He created his magic key, then inserted it into the box, and as expected successfully opened and then took the contents. Suddenly, Penelope returns and says that it will be difficult to meet today. Adrian managed to sit down on the sofa so as not to attract attention, and he asked again if the trial was tomorrow and if he could come again. Penelope told him that of course she could, whereupon he left. And so the day of the trial came. The girl just had to do everything the way she had memorized it. The trial wouldn't last long, about half an hour. It should be a formal trial with rehearsed words to be said. And anger is not a reason to use magic homelessly. The girl should stay calm, as she doesn't know how to control her power yet. There was also a toddler supporting the girl from the balcony, and there were 2 men with him. And so the trial began. The staff researcher had to start interrogating Eleanor. He asked her if she stole the egg and created the dragon bond, and asked other questions they had in the script. The girl agreed and told everything as it was scripted. That's pretty much it. All that's left to say at the end is his allegiance to the Empire. It was really easy. The girl already wanted to go back to her village with the baby and live in peace. In that case, Kyle said he asked that the defendant be sentenced to 5 years in prison followed by 1,000 hours of community service. The girl quite agreed and was ready to say her last words. But suddenly, the court talk was interrupted by someone who decided to come into the courtroom. Nobody realized what was going on. Some other people came up to Kyle and the people who were holding court and started explaining something. Then the head of the court said that the witness is allowed. And a new witness walks into the courtroom. It was him, Stalker Scum. Everyone became very tense, and this was not part of their plans. After he entered, he began to tell that all of Laurent's mages were under his control. So far, they had placed great importance on Eleanor's natural magical abilities and protected her. But this time, the safety of the civilians was at risk. She stole the dragon egg in the name of curiosity, while realizing that speaking and creating a bond with a dragon was a serious matter. Adrian said that he watched her for about 5 days from the 2nd to the 7th of May. He now knows for certain that Eleanor is unable to properly control the dragon's magic. And the last 2 years she's been in Sorrento, she's had trouble with her magical powers. So she stole the egg to replenish her powers. But apparently things didn't go according to plan, just like this. The girl didn't know what to do. She wanted to come to her senses and not give in to this stalker's provocations. She didn't want to think about anything and ruin anything. Mu was ready to destroy the place, but the girl immediately ran up to him to stop him. Adrian said it's direct proof that she can't control the dragon. He then asked the court for permission and to use the monster restraining devices on Eleanor. He was allowed. The girl was utterly bewildered. She didn't know what he was talking about now. Then the people who had the device that held the monsters came into the room, and they pointed it in the direction of the girl. Then Adrian said that as the court sees it, she is not only unable to cope with the dragon's power but struggles to keep her sanity. However, given the fact that the dragon's magic will contribute to Laurent's revival, Eleanor's value as his mistress must be taken into account. 1006. Therefore, he began to request that the defendant be sentenced to confinement in this unit, and 200,000 hours of community service, and he should be given special supervision over Eleanor. 200,000 is 8,300 days. 8,300 days is about 22 years. 12 hours a day is about 44 years. But if you work 8 hours a day, that's about 60 years. Afterwards, they left the courtroom, Adrian telling the girl that the collar suited her and today was fun. It's a shame, of course, that he wasn't allowed to control Eleanor. In the hall here, Kyle suddenly exclaimed, he said that as of today, the authority to control Eleanor is requesting that the authority to control Eleanor be transferred to him. He is willing to risk his whole name, position, and part to protect Laurent from any threat. Since it was his responsibility from the beginning, he will take responsibility for all incidents involving Eleanor from now on. Adrian said it's not the time to show your nobility, and she said that the citizens of Lorraine would not take well to an investigator hanging around with a criminal. The girl grabbed the guy and told him not to let the stalker bother her, and she could easily break that collar. But he replied that he had his own thoughts and wanted her to listen to him. He didn't mean to deceive her, as the girl herself feels that she is in danger, even though the dragon looks cute. Recklessly believing that it is actually an innocent child is not worth it. The anger the girl feels lately is because of him, and she can't control his power. In fact, the girl really understood everything, and would have been a fool not to realize it at all. After she and the kid had established a connection, the girl started to feel some kind of impulses. Not only could she not control her power, she also began to have a huge urge to kill someone. Adrian had told her something that she couldn't even protect her mind, but that didn't mean you had to fix the dragon, so he wanted to help her. This device will protect her from the dragon. Of course, if she wanted to destroy the device with her power, she could do so, but would it be the right choice? The girl didn't know what to say to him. Adrian also added that the girl had come here anyway to learn control of the dragon's magic and he could help. He would let her go when he thought she had improved enough to avoid being eaten by the dragon. After the girl came in, Kyle asked how the girl was feeling. She immediately went over to hug him. She couldn't contain herself from crying. After these events, they all went to the car together. The kid was worried that he was causing a lot of trouble. He apologized to Noah as he was the reason she was being punished. The girl replied to the kid that it was not because of him that she was punished, but because of the yellow-haired guy who interfered in the trial. He probably thought this whole thing through beforehand. Kyle tried not to let that outcome happen, but it was his oversight. He didn't know about the girl's unstable condition. Perhaps his purpose was to provoke her along with the dragon and confuse the court president. Suddenly, the girl decides to ask the man if he can take the baby on a tour when he goes to the security and investigation department or the imperial castle. She thought it would be easier for him to understand morality if he could see it with his own eyes. The man agreed and said that in recent days he too had felt the need to educate him. Kyle felt like it was the girl's words that kept him from hurting people. At least he was glad the dragon listened to the girl. And here they were. It was Eleanor's own mansion. The girl was surprised that everything was the same as when she left. 1034. Also on entering, they were immediately captured by the camera. It recognized that the girl, Eleanor, the guy is an unwanted guest, and the baby was not recognized. Identify this kid's personal details and asked Eleanor if he would be allowed in. The arrangement in this house has always been very abusive. The man told the girl that she had done a great job today, and wished her a good rest. And it was time for him to leave. But the girl suggested that he have dinner with her first. There was no one else in the house, so they could talk quietly. The girl didn't know how other people were, but at least Mr. Kyle shouldn't be like other people. There is only one person in this world who knows her very well. The man agreed and said he'd stay until 8, and gave the girl 30 minutes to unpack the boot, and another 30 to wash up and change. And so the girl had already washed and changed her clothes, and when she came in, she saw no one. After that, the little boy together with the man went out to the girl. The man prepared food for her, and I asked the girl if she had soap, to which she replied in the affirmative. Afterwards, they sat down at the table and Kyle put dinner on the table. The girl didn't ask him to cook, but he thought it would be better. The girl also didn't expect them to sit together. She thought they would sit opposite each other. Even in Sorrento, the food prepared by Mr. Kyle was exceptionally warm. As a child or an adult, she had never had this before. Ever since she became a member of the society, she hadn't had the energy or time to cook. And naturally, there was no man to cook for her. The girl had suggested to Kyle that he just live with her, and she would give him double the investigator's annual salary. It was her dream. But the man wouldn't agree, so the girl asked him to at least teach her how to cook. She wants to taste again what they had for dinner tonight. Now being in the capital, she can easily go shopping. The girl had a wound and wanted to touch it, but the man told her not to touch it or it would make things worse. He told the girl to keep eating and he'd bring the ointment. The man brought the ointment and told the girl to remove her hair. There were many abrasions on her neck. Even if it all hurt, she shouldn't touch it. The man told the girl to ask the minister to change the size of her device as it could leave scars if she continued to wear it. And as soon as the man dabbed her neck, the girl immediately proceeded to gobble. The man didn't expect it to be this good. On the 20th, Eleanor brought before the court suspicions of egg theft. Eleanor admitted part of the charge and was sentenced to 200,000 hours of community service and £100,000 bail. The staff investigator, who acted as prosecutor, was given special powers to supervise Eleanor. Each week, Eleanor will receive special training and be supervised by the Minister of Magic. The next day, when the girl met the white-haired guy, he was saying that the girl had become very stupid after losing her memory. He didn't know what she was thinking, but the girl replied that she was just annoyed by his face. There were 3 other girls watching them. They were the Ministry of Magic's public order officers. They said that the Baroness's character had changed a lot. Now she's not so oppressive to the staff, and she's rebuilding everything that was destroyed during the class. They also heard that during the trial, she provided a letter of remorse. They didn't know what prompted it. Must be a political move. She realizes the public and the press are watching her. But one of the girls said she thought it was all about love. The Minister of Magic and Eleanor were lovers. Whenever she was in trouble, the minister took her side. Because of this, the minister received a lot of criticism from the public. Nevertheless, they had a very long relationship and only deep feelings. However, because of her selfish behavior, Eleanor constantly found herself at the center of all sorts of scandals. The minister couldn't take it anymore, so they ended up quarreling and broke up right outside the palace. And after the breakup, the Baroness felt the utmost emptiness for the first time in her life. Even with the boundless fortune she possessed, it was impossible to win back his heart. And Eleanor repents and seeks the solitude of the village with regret. And then her prayers were answered. She received the dragon's powers. And though the man was cold to her, when they met again in the hall of the SVDA, she apologizes again and again, trying to atone for her guilt. Can she win Adrian's heart? But they just laughed at the girl and said she was making it all up. They wasted 6 illustrations on her fantasies. Eleanor at this time was reading about what magic is. Magic is a high-density force that encompasses all dimensions. There are several hypotheses about the radius of magic power. Presently, the most successful of them is that, besides our dimension in which we exist, there are other dimensions in the world. Magic encompasses them all. Many researchers make this argument on the basis that the powers of the dragon, felt to exist in another dimension, originate all enchantments. The power of the dragon is much purer and denser than the magic of our world. The dragon's power is much purer and denser than the magic of our world. Back in ancient times, dragons began to move in instead called Muith, and the land of humans began to be filled with magic. In those days, many more people could conjure, and at that time, pure magic was transforming. But the dragons lost interest in their dimension, and one by one left the lands. After their departure, the magical power diminished noticeably, and human intelligence began to fill the void. Teleportation mages replaced the railways, attack magic replaced gunpowder and firearms, and healing magic was replaced by medicine. What the girl was reading was not up to the 21st century in which the girl lived. To qualify as a mage, you must either be extremely sensitive to magical energy dissolved in nature, or be born with greater magical power than normal humans. Eleanor was a genius at recycling magic, who was good at finding nature's magic and applying it correctly. And a white-haired man is an accomplished one who possesses a huge supply of pure magic in his body. And that is a great rarity. So the only one who can teach the girl to control this power is Adrian. The man was telling the girl to get up as she needs to try again, but she answered that she couldn't because she wanted to rest. She wanted to end it already. The man did not understand how long the girl was going to rest. She needed to train. They had been trying for a few days, but she was not making any progress. In front of the court, this guy looked important and strong, but with the girl he's acting very soft. If it were Kyle, he would have picked the girl up and made her do it immediately. Adrian asked if the girl was thinking about another man. The girl answered that she was not thinking about anyone else, but she could not understand how he knew about it. Every time a man thinks he knows her, it turns out he doesn't. No matter how much she thinks about it, he's quite normal now. But Renaud is strange. It's a natural reaction for a man to soften when a beautiful girl is in front of him. But at least it's unusual that she's the only one embarrassed and not finding a place near Kyle. It hurt the girl's self-esteem. Adrian also told the girl that he was very interested in her, but unfortunately the girl wasn't the one he was in love with. During dinner with the pickaxe, the girl tells me that the white-haired man is very suspicious. The baby was gobbling and Kyle didn't hear the girl and asked again. 1090. The girl repeated again that Adrian is very suspicious, but since they had a very long table, the man was telling her things he couldn't hear her. So the man got up and then decided to walk over to the girl and sit down beside her. He started to ask her why she had been avoiding him lately. He didn't understand what he had done wrong, but the girl said that everything was fine. Kyle said he realized she wasn't comfortable with the girl. If she needed anything, she could let him know in a letter. Tomorrow he accompanies her to the scene of the investigation, and tonight the girl must be ready. After which Kyle picked up the little one and led the way. But suddenly the little boy stopped him and wanted to say something. He said something that Noah didn't want her uncle to leave. The man took him in his arms and apologized for them fighting in front of him. He might see the girl again tomorrow, but he was done for the day. His mistress had been avoiding him all day. The little boy said that the girl worries when the uncle comes close, but she doesn't want him to leave. The man didn't know how to understand her. When he was close, it was hard. When he left, it was awkward. The girl was uncomfortable and wanted to apologize. And so the next day, they came to the separate building of the Bureau of Investigation and Public Order Protection. Meanwhile, the kid was having fun with Kyle's subordinates. This side attracts less attention than the main headquarters. And since the building is new, security is tight. All witnesses and evidence are stored on the first floor. And the man called the girl over to show her this. This is the specimen they saw on the ship. It looked like a robot. The girl was shocked that this was incredible technology. The man said that he fought with this machine. It was in human form until it changed into this texture. All 5 people he dealt with on the ship fell apart except one, and he had a capital letter R written on the back of his ear. Even when they looked different, they had that pattern behind their ears. He still hasn't figured out what it means. Out of 5 men, he managed to catch and interrogate the only one who turned out to be the real one. He claimed not to know the meaning of the letter. The capitalization separates real and not real people. In other words, he assumes it could mean the main body in the copy. He doesn't know the point of origin of this mechanism either, only that he's heard there's a factory somewhere. And if it's a factory, that means mass production. He's been told that the Ministry of Magic only knows one thing. The top brass gives all the orders, the rest of us, like him, follow them. And from what he's heard, the top man is some kind of powerful person. The key word is influencer the Ministry of Magic. There is no hierarchy there now. The position of deputy minister is vacant. The authority to answer through each department is absurdly mola, compared to the authority of the Security and Investigation Bureau. In this structure, the decision-making power belongs to the minister. In addition, the scale of the ministry became smaller and smaller every year, so a young man like Adrian was able to become a minister. In other words, someone who could be called an influential person. He's the only one who fits that role. Maybe he was targeting Eleanor, who had the power of a dragon. Kyle didn't know that, and he had no idea how far this story would go. And let's not forget Eleanor's murder. And if Rosanelle is somehow involved, he may also know that the girl is not who she says she is. According to the testimony of the terrorists in the train, they were ordered not to kill Eleanor but to take her prisoner. After they finish questioning this man, they plan to focus on Adrian. Of course, these investigations will be conducted in secret, and they don't know how far they'll go. The girl said that she will try to find out something from her side, as he has classes with her every week. The man also added that he will soon go on a business trip to Noviskosh. She will have to be alone during that time. If something happens during that time, he won't be able to help, so the girl should be as careful as possible. Noviskosh is a province in the northeast. After developing the automaton, it was possible to determine the area of production. It contained magical ore from one of the mines in these lands. Among the minerals that are extracted from the mine, it is particularly valuable. All data on its collection and distribution are checked personally by the Ministry of Magic. They had no record of making mechanical humans using these materials. That meant the magic ore was being distributed illegally. He plans to look for beta paths that haven't been checked yet. There were many cases of disappearance recorded. They would find out as they went along. Suddenly, Penelope bursts in on them and tells the captain that the doctor is already expecting her, as this is the last medical checkup before we leave. But she didn't notice that Noah was still in the room, so she let it slip. Then she apologized and slipped out, closing the door behind her. Noah didn't understand what had happened to him. Later, Kyle was playing with the baby. He asked if Noah was mad at him, to which he replied that he was angry, which made the man feel uncomfortable. What Mew said was that if he'd known the girl would be angry, he would have said it sooner. He had no idea that his uncle's injuries were a secret. Apparently, Noah is very worried about him. And then Noah walks up to them. The man tried to start apologizing to her, after which the girl said she was upset. When she feels bad, the man takes care of her and helps her. She wants to take care of him too. Even if she can't, she just wants him to trust her a little bit. And she's upset because he doesn't trust her. The girl was worried that Kyle was hiding his problems from her. And then the girl tells him to take off his clothes. The man was shocked, not realizing what she was saying. The girl repeated that she wanted him to take off his clothes so she could look at the wound. The man had nothing to say, and to this he decided to agree and began to undress. You couldn't see anything because of the bandages, but the wound seemed pretty big, and the girl wanted to touch her. The man wouldn't let her and bounced off her. The next day, when Kyle went to his boss, he told him that he was being sent to Edmund's branch. He was shocked. He didn't understand why it was so sudden. The captain replied that there were reasons for this, then threw the documents down and told him to look for himself. If he has any explanations, he can give them. It could be a demotion. It says the head of the Bureau of Investigation and a witch with 16 priors. A pursuit that lasted several years ended in love. The warden said the article was written after a tip-off from an anonymous informant. It was written based on a recording of a conversation between the guy and Eleanor. The guy immediately thought what it was Penelope, but she denied it and said it wasn't her. The captain said he got the newspaper publisher to cancel the morning paper. Well, Kyle should clear his head in Edmund. Kyle argued that the case he was dealing with was more urgent, but his boss wouldn't listen to him. Then he told him to hand over all his business and not come back to the capital for a while. After he came out, the boy turned to Penelope. He said that he had told her that all the information on the case was secret, but she had not kept her word. The girl claimed that she hadn't told anyone anything, and she swore. She said that she did take a tape of her and Eleanor's conversation, but only because the conversation was weird. She swore that she'd then put the data in a locker and locked it up. It was in a safe place, and even if she had to leave the workplace for a while. And then the girl remembered that the Minister of Magic had come by then, and afterwards Viscount Rollin had come to visit. At that time, Adrian was with Eleanor. He asked her where she had left the dragon. To which she replied that it was playing in the garden. The guy had announced in advance that they were going to practice mental integration today. I guess the girl just didn't want to do it with him. Adrian also added that next week he will be traveling on a business trip, and she will be able to rest all this time. He also added that the girl should not expect too much, as she will be doing community service all this time. The girl then went to the garden to take the baby to her. On the way, she thought about how she could forge records of community service, but suddenly on the way she saw Lenya, who greeted her. The girl looked at her and realized that last time she had thought she was just pretending not to know her, but now she had no expression at all. It was as different as possible from the one I saw on the ship. Then the girl grabbed her and took her to the wall. Lenya replied that she didn't know anything. I did try though. She said if she was having trouble, she could give some kind of sign or hint. All of a sudden, the girl decides to check and see if she has something near her ear. And as expected, it said the very letter R. The Lenya seen by Kyle's subordinate at the mansion was a double. The doppelganger wasn't hired or even cared for. Someone who was really worried about. Before I could say anything, the little boy came to the girl and told them to go practice. Then using magic, they got there as quickly as possible. The girl told the baby that she urgently needed to tell Kyle that Lenya was a fake, and told him to find Kyle as soon as possible. They first decided to check his office on the first floor, but suddenly someone appeared near them. After that, the girl was pinned against the wall and started telling her to be quiet. It was Penelope. Noah told her she was here to see Mr. Kyle, to which she replied that the captain had left at dawn, and she also added that he'd gone to Edmund. The girl was shocked. He definitely said he was going on a business trip to Noviskosh, but Penelope started apologizing to her, saying it was her fault. At this time, he was already on the train with Baal. The man asked him if he had found what he was talking about, to which the man replied in the affirmative, that he had found the Minister of Magic's schedule. The official schedule's pretty tight, all because of the incident on the railway tracks last month. They have time to investigate. The man couldn't stop worrying about the girl. Suddenly, the man began to change his clothes. The subordinate didn't understand why he had started to change, to which Kyle replied that he would get off halfway through. If he got caught, he'd have to take off his costume too, so he had to behave. The guy was shocked and wanted to know at least where he was going. The guy was very frightened because if it was found out, it would be not only a reprimand but also dismissal. But he said it was all right, and he'd already found another job. Butler's job. At this time, Noah missed the butler. She was training with Adrian again, and he was telling her how to train better. The girl was remembering what Penelope had told her, that Kyle had been demoted, due to the fact that she, while sorting through the records from the ship in them, was recorded a strange conversation between the girl and Kale. She's been monitoring the records by the book, but the warden suspects the minister stole them. 1181. Then she wanted to know who Eleanor really was, after which the girl apologized and said what she couldn't say. Penelope also told her that the warden had left her a message, that she shouldn't do anything dangerous. If anything happened, to go straight to the capital. He didn't say where exactly. He asked her to be extra careful with the minister. She'd relayed the message from her superior and was helping Eleanor now, because she believed him to be a kind and good man. More specifically, she trusts Kyle's judgment. Adrian didn't realize what the matter was, however superficial her presence was. It wasn't often you see someone so absorbed in the magic of others. By that he meant he couldn't figure out who Eleanor was, so the guy suggested we take a little distraction and go see the dragon. The girl then asked Mew if he remembered what she had told him. He nodded happily. Afterwards, the girl handed the boy over to the minister and wished them luck. After seeing that the minister had indeed taken the dragon to study it, she discreetly left. She sneaked into the secret library, and today she wanted to find something. She decided to find something that starts with the letter R. As expected, among the words I started with that letter is one that means duplication. She got this book to read, and that was the doppelganger theory, basic level. Since she didn't have time to read, she started taking full pictures of the book. Afterwards, I decided to go further, and suddenly she saw Eleanor's collection there. There were so many books. The girl couldn't believe that Eleanor had done all this. There were a lot of things that helped her to adapt to the world, and that were often seen in the house and on the street. I think she really is a genius. But suddenly, the girl saw an empty shop window, and she didn't understand why it was standing there. It didn't look like it had been prepared in advance. When the girl got closer, she saw what it said was a replica project, made with Adrian Rosenal. It was a human cloning study, but the blueprints weren't there. She had no choice but to photograph the empty display case. The girl would very much like to pass on everything she knows to Kyle right now, but sending so much material would seem very suspicious. And as Ko had said, she should leave the capital and give it to him in person. She remembered that Adrian would be traveling on a business trip soon, so she would have the opportunity. She remembered that he hadn't mentioned where he would be traveling to. Although Novoskosh is the largest province, it is also the least populated district. However, the bowels of these lands had large reserves of not only magic ore, but also iron ore and precious stones. It became the most famous mining region on the entire continent. Mining is an industry that requires a large amount of labor. Therefore, mines were mostly run by aristocrats with huge capital. However, there is one mine that has been run by a middle-class entrepreneur for 3 generations. A huge magical mine located in the heart of the province, Mauviana. Kyle was riding a horse with some grandpa at the time. Grandfather told him what he'd heard, that a lot of bad things have been happening in Myovian lately, and there are a lot of bad rumors about it. Since about last month, they say a bunch of slaves working at the mine have died mysterious deaths. That must be causing the owner a lot of trouble. Because of this incident, the miners' pay has doubled. They were all still called slaves. Although they are not, the miners call themselves that. The province's Regional Bureau of Investigation requested help from the capital as they could not deal with this on their own. 1211. But the problem still remains. A man believes there are monsters in the mountains. They have captured slaves and eaten them. Grandpa also asked Kyle who he was, because he looked like he came from a noble family, and he didn't understand why he had come to the middle of nowhere. The man replied that he wanted to find a job. A little later in town, when the man had already been taken, this uncle was approached by someone in a blue cloak. This person started asking if he knew how to get to Myoviana. Grandpa said that it was not safe there lately, and asked if she was sure she wanted to go there with a baby in her arms. So she said yes. And so this person was brought there. The man said that there were inns and taverns nearby. After wishing the lady good luck and saying goodbye, the girl reciprocated him. A girl came to the office of Colton, the owner of the mine. They asked her what brought her here. She started to say that she was wondering if there was any developed area near Mauviana. She was about to start a mining business and wanted to ask Mrs. Colton for advice. In response, the girl hesitated and said that as far as she knew, most of the undeveloped areas are no-go zones. But she was asked how to address the girl. Afterwards, the girl remembered what Kyle had told her, that if she was asked to prove her identity in the future, she could use the Renaud family name. So she answered Noah Renaud. He didn't seem to believe her, but he apologized for being rude and said he wanted to ask her about her relationship with the writer who had come here a week ago. The girl immediately realized that Mr. Renaud was here too, and she remembered how he had introduced himself at the liner, and she said that Mr. Derek Renaud was her husband. The guy didn't understand why the girl hadn't said so immediately. They had collected the materials he had requested at the time. He'd turned up 5 days ago and hadn't been in contact since. So they were going to contact him. Afterwards, the man asked to follow him, and he would escort the girl to Mrs. Colton. Mistress told the girl that this was a map of the mine and the location of the minerals. The province's minerals are 90% magic ore and 8% copper. Noah said that she came to discuss mining in undeveloped areas, to which the lady replied that it was better to buy a ready-made mine than to start digging from scratch on an untouched mountain range. Besides, the mountains were very precipitous, so it was difficult to extract minerals there. Not to mention the fact that the Ministry of Magic had banned mining in this area a few years ago. Noah couldn't understand why she was trying so hard to sell it. After all, this mine had been producing magical ore for 3 generations. It must be for the same reason. So she decided to ask her if it was because of the disappearance incident. Madam was silent. Then she began her story. As the girl knows, Myoviana has some geological abilities. Beneath the mountain range is a huge lake of incommensurate proportions. The lower down in the mine, the closer you get to the underground lake. The mine got deep enough to see it. When it rains, the lake often comes out of the box, so they offer heaps of effort to pump out the water and have even installed a safety system. Thanks to this, only 5 miners have died since then. But since last month, workers have started disappearing one by one. Some of them were found dead in the lake and the walls of the mine. So far, 43 people have gone missing. 1 was found dead. Also, according to other miners, there is a monster at the bottom of this lake. The girl couldn't understand what kind of monster it was, and why she was talking about a monster all of a sudden. She thought it was Ulam or the Ministry of Magic. I guess the locals really believe in such things. 1237. Marvina is known as the place where the Cradle of Dragons was located even before the foundation of Loran, and so it is characterized by its production of high-quality and pure magical ore. Recently, a witch from Loran became the mistress of a dragon. The timing of its arrival coincides with the disappearance of the miners. The appearance of the MU had affected the Highlands Ridge. Whether that's why people started disappearing or whether it had nothing to do with it, the girl couldn't understand. Mistress added that, whatever the case, the girl would be safe as long as she didn't go too deep into the mine. There was no one in the deep part of the mine at the moment, so there were no new disappearances. The mistress would endeavor to contribute as much as possible to the price of her inquiry. Considering the immense size and future value of the mine, £10 million would be ample. But the girl didn't want to name a high price so as to make herself look like a simpleton, so she quoted a price of £4 million. She was asked again, but the girl repeated that she wanted $4 million. Mistress tried to increase the price as it is a magical mine, but Noah still said she was willing to give $4 million. Mistress had nothing to say, so she decided to agree. Then she signed the papers where she filled in that the price would be $4 million. Afterwards, Mistress decided to ask the girl for her ID card as she needed to make sure she had enough money. Then the girl showed her ID card that said she was Eleanor Aesel, and she said she'd write her a check. She added that instead of making a deal with Derek Renaud, it was better to make a deal with her. After which the girl came out and the little boy ran up to her. The girl immediately started asking him if he had seen his uncle around, but he said he hadn't seen anyone. But he added that this place was really amazing. There were a lot of spirits here. He couldn't see their faces because they were deep underground, but they said they were glad to see the dragon. If Noah listened carefully, she might be able to hear them too. But the girl couldn't hear anything. Suddenly the girl saw a man. He was saying that today they were recruiting miners for the night shift. Those who go will get 4 times the daily wage. And the girl and the baby went to the transport, but they didn't hear that this transport was going to the mine. And so the girl and the baby had already arrived at the mine. The baby was given a special helmet. Since the girl didn't know the transport was going into the mine, she wanted to get out of here fast. Uncle said not to hurt the baby. One of the commanders noticed the girl standing there doing nothing, and he started telling her not to stand around and to find a mate faster. Suddenly, some man comes up behind the girl and says he wants to be paired with her. It was Kyle, who said they hadn't seen each other in a while. He asked the girl when she arrived and why she was here and also in the mine. But the girl smiled and said that she had not intended to come here and had got here by accident. The boy didn't understand how it was possible to get here by accident, and asked what happened in the capital. The girl immediately told him that Lenya was a fake, and had a letter behind her ear like in dolls. Also, it appears that the creation of these automatons was a joint research between Eleanor and Adrian. The girl found evidence in Adrian's library, but he had managed to hide the more detailed descriptions. The guy was telling the girl that she did something dangerous again, and she didn't understand why he couldn't just praise her, and so they came to the lowest level. There was a very beautiful lake that shone very brightly. That's because the lake contained mana. If they investigated the place better, they would be able to figure out who was involved in stealing the magic ore, monster or criminal. Mew felt like he was back in the egg. Kyle said to look forward to it, because they were about to do something fun. No one knew the depths of this lake, but rumor has it that it is connected to the grate sloping outside the mine. Afterwards, the guy asks the girl if she can swim, and jumps into the lake with the baby. And he tells the girl to jump to it, and the baby is all set. Afterwards, he jumped too, and they climbed on the dragon together. Thanks to his power, they could breathe easily underwater. And it was very beautiful. This is where the dragons lived thousands of years ago. Their magic must have made it so special. The girl also saw moths, and the girl couldn't understand why they were flying towards her. Just as suddenly, the girl felt the limiter loosen a little. Ko thought it was because of the dragon's remaining power. That's why things made by human hands are very easy to break in this place. The girl remembered Adrian's words telling her not to touch it because if it broke, the girl wouldn't be able to control herself. And to have a look round, they burst out. The baby was very happy because he had a lot of fun. Looks like the cemetery. This place was passed by a lot of people. There was a lot of magical ore around. Kyle was telling the girl not to go too far away, and the girl left to look around. But suddenly she heard a knocking. She didn't realize what it was and decided to move closer. Suddenly she saw a monster that began to rapidly approach her. You heard the screams, and together with the pickaxe they went at them. Then they saw the mistress saying that her clothes were dirty. For some reason the girl was covered in blood. The guy noticed that her clothes were wet, but now they were completely dry, and her neck device was gone. There was also an unidentified person lying next to her, also covered in blood. Noah said that she thought someone was approaching, and then when she turned around she saw someone trying to attack her. Looking at the clothes, it looked like the man had worked in a mine. But Kyle couldn't understand how it happened. The girl didn't understand why she wanted to kill a living person again, so she did. She got scared and said she didn't do it on purpose. Looks like the man was still alive and might be able to be cured. This is the place that Sailor left to the dragons left on this earth. But when people discovered this place, they started exploring it, and continued to ravage the nest that held the power of the Sailor. So they locked them in here. Some people tried to escape, but they died. The baby heard what the fairies were telling him and was telling it all to Kyle since he couldn't hear them. The fairy said the girl was a special person. Right now she's under the influence of a dragon. The dragon must belong to human descendants. The man distracted the girl and said there were still others locked in there, and they went in. Because the connection between the soul and the body is weak, all this happens. The girl knew that and didn't know how to deal with it if she didn't even own the body. And then the fairy suggested that the girl return to her body, but Noah replied that her body was already dead. But the fairy answered that her soul had just left him for a while. If her body had died, the girl would have lost all her memories and herself, then disappeared. The connection is weak, but it's still alive. When the girl died, she saw her dead self, and after a long wandering through the immense black space, she came here. But I didn't believe it was breathing at all. The fairy said that the girl found an empty body that was in the same situation and was able to enter it. This is a very rare and unique case. The girl began to realize that she could still return to her body. The fairy said that the girl should hurry as the approach that connects different worlds is not always open. The girl has to follow her cradle group. Everything that happens here is related to her. This is where the dragon's lullaby was located. Maybe that's the exact spot that Moo saw in the egg. Miu led Kyle in the right direction, the one where the fairies caught the humans. Kyle also asked the girl what she wanted to say. The girl asked him if her appearance changed, would he treat her the same. The girl told him that she could return to her formerly youthful body, and if she was lucky, it would all work out. The man didn't know what to say and remained silent. And so they all came together to a group of workers. Kyle didn't understand at what point the owner of the mine ordered them to start mining here, where there was an undeveloped theory. Everything mined there had to be logged. There was a dealer who came through the cliff road once a month. Their job was to hand over the spoils to them. They got paid at once and then handed it over to the mine owner. By her, he means Mrs. Colton. The laborers replied that they had been at it for 2.5 years. It's been about a month and a half since people started going missing. Since then, the workers' double wages have started to double. In the meantime, several people have died here or just frozen to death. Around this time, Eleanor Asel and Adrian broke up. The reason for their separation was Eleanor's death, and they had a conflict during their research together. There's only one way down the cliff. If you walk along the road, you'll see a fuel replenishment station. It is not in use now, but decades ago there was a railway in Turin. On the day of the appointment with the dealer, black smoke billowed from the side of the station. Maybe Ulam was involved. At least everyone they've encountered so far has been their man. They were reportedly responsible for the train attack. Perhaps the owner of the mine found out about it and decided to run away. If it becomes known that so much valuable material was wrongfully stolen, more than 24 times in 2 years, it won't stop at confiscating the mine. In the worst cases, it will rot in prison for decades. Suddenly, the girl started sighing and the man didn't realize what had happened. And she said that she basically bought the mine. The man was shocked he didn't realize what the girl was thinking when she bought the mine. A man has a lot of trouble every time a girl gets involved. The girl apologized, but he told her to forget it. Now they have something else to deal with. The man put his hand on the girl and asked the girl if she was ready. She replied that she was ready, and the man said that if she felt threatened, to come straight back. Afterwards, the girl and Mayu flew off. They felt an unusual energy together, and they crept closer and closer to her. And there she saw a passageway that connected different worlds. The girl didn't know where to go, but she saw a moth, and he told her that she should just go wherever her feet led her. Since it's her hometown, it will attract her herself. Noah decided to ask what was the place where she was born, and the girl said that her parents were only interested in her little brother. She thought they'd love her if she went to university and got a good job. But she was wrong. Leaving behind friends and hobbies, she clung to her job trying to gain recognition, but in reality was just expendable that the company used and discarded. And suddenly the girl wakes up in her body. She looked around and realized she did go back into her body. The streets were just as she remembered. The girl's body remained in good shape despite the fact that she had been lying down for a long time. The doctor was shocked when he saw her. Afterwards, the girl was on her way in the car with her mom. The girl looked at her phone and there was no one she wanted to call. Everything was really like it used to be. If she didn't go back, she'd have to live her whole life doing what she was used to in the place she was used to. Not being attacked by assassins, not climbing on the roof of a carrying train, without being tried as a criminal, and without having to listen to Mr. Butler's lectures. The girl remembered his words that if she felt threatened, she could go back. And then Noah appeared beside her, asking if Noah would go back to her uncle or stay here. He didn't care as long as Noah was happy. The choice was entirely up to her. Suddenly at night, the girl's mom noticed that the girl was going out. She asked if she was going to run away from home. The girl merely replied that there was no need to look for her now, and from now on she will live a happy life. She got something she really liked. The girl came to the shop and wanted to spend all her savings, but for some reason she didn't want anything now. I just wanted to buy Mayu some goodies. It had been 3 days. Kyle looked up into the clouds and the girl was still gone. It was quiet, and he only hoped nothing had happened to her, and worried if she could find her body, or wandered off into the unknown, or she wouldn't come back at all. It was obvious that if she got into her body, she might not come back, even though she'd assured him otherwise. He didn't believe that the promise she'd made to the man she'd known for months would be real. Suddenly, Kyle hears his name being called as Mr. Butler, and in the sky he saw Mew along with a girl. Looks like it was the girl's real body. The girl greeted Mr. Butler and said that she had returned to him.